I still remember the exact moment my father's face turned cold. It was my wedding day, June 15th, in the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan. The chandeliers sparkled overhead, white roses adorned every surface, and 200 guests in designer clothes sipped champagne and waited for the ceremony to begin. Everything was perfect, exactly as my mother had planned it. Except for one detail. The groom. My name is Alexander Harrison, but everyone calls me Alex. I'm 26 years old, and up until 6 months ago, I was the beloved only daughter of Richard Harrison, CEO of Harrison Industries, one of the largest real estate development companies on the East Coast. My father built an empire from nothing, starting with a small construction company in Queens and turning it into a billion-dollar corporation with properties from Boston to Miami. Growing up, I had everything money could buy. Private schools, summer homes in the Hamptons, ski trips to Aspen, a trust fund that would have set me up for life. But I also had expectations. My father expected me to marry well, to someone who could expand the Harrison empire, someone from our world of country clubs and charity galas and business connections. That someone was supposed to be Preston Ashford III, son of the Ashford banking family, my boyfriend of 3 years. We'd met at a fundraiser for the Met, been set up by our mothers who'd been friends since their own debutante days. Preston was handsome, educated, from the right family. He checked every box on my father's list. Except I didn't love him. And 6 months before my planned wedding to Preston, I met Marcus. Marcus Chin worked as a high school teacher at a public school in the Bronx. I met him at a literacy nonprofit event where I was volunteering, one of the few things I did that my father actually approved of, though he saw it more as networking than genuine charity work. Marcus was there with a group of his students, kids from tough neighborhoods who were part of an after-school reading program. He had this way about him, this genuine warmth and passion when he talked about his students, about education, about making a difference. He wore a slightly wrinkled button-down shirt and khakis, had paint stains on his shoes from an art project, and when he smiled, his whole face lit up. He was nothing like the men I usually met at charity events, the ones in $1,000 suits who talked about stock portfolios and vacation homes. We started talking about the literacy program, and before I knew it, 2 hours had passed. He asked for my number, and I gave it to him, even though a voice in my head warned me that my father would never approve. Our first date was at a small Thai restaurant in the East Village, nothing fancy, just good food and better conversation. Marcus told me about growing up in Flushing, Queens, the son of Chinese immigrants who ran a small grocery store. About how he'd been the first in his family to go to college, working 3 jobs to get through NYU. About his dream of opening a charter school in an underserved community, giving kids the opportunities he'd fought so hard to get. I told him about my life too, but it felt shallow in comparison. What did I have to be proud of? Being born into wealth? Getting a degree from Columbia that my father's donation had probably helped secure? Working at my father's company in a position I'd been handed, not earned? You volunteer at that literacy program, Marcus pointed out when I voiced these thoughts. That matters. And you clearly care about making a difference, or you wouldn't be there. I don't know, I admitted. Sometimes I feel like I'm just playing at being helpful, you know? Like it's a hobby more than a commitment. So make it a commitment, he said simply. You have resources, connections, privilege. You could use all of that for real good if you wanted to. It was the first time anyone had challenged me like that, had suggested I could be more than just Richard Harrison's daughter. I fell in love with him that night, sitting in that small restaurant with mismatched chairs and a menu written on a chalkboard. Breaking up with Preston was messy. He was furious, his family was outraged, and my father was devastated. Not because his daughter's heart was broken, but because a valuable business alliance had just fallen through. This teacher, my father said, spitting out the word like it was poison. This nobody from Queens. You threw away Preston Ashford for him? I threw away a loveless relationship for someone who actually sees me as a person, not a business asset, I corrected. Don't be naive, Alexandra. Love doesn't pay the bills. Love doesn't build empires. This Marcus, what can he offer you? A teacher's salary? A life of struggling to make ends meet? He offers me respect, partnership, genuine affection. Things I never got from Preston. My father's face hardened. If you marry this man, you're making a choice. And choices have consequences. I thought he was bluffing. I thought that when it came down to it, he'd choose his daughter over his pride. I was wrong. Marcus proposed to me on a bench in Central Park, near Bethesda Fountain, on a cold February evening. He didn't have an expensive ring, just a simple gold band with a small diamond that had belonged to his grandmother. It was more meaningful than any 5-carat rock from Tiffany's could have been. I know I'm not what your family expected, he said, kneeling in the snow. I know I can't give you the life you're used to. But I love you, Alex. I see you, the real you, not the version your father wants you to be. And I promise to spend every day of my life being a true partner to you. I said yes through happy tears, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was making a choice that was truly mine. Planning the wedding was a nightmare. My mother tried to be supportive, but she was caught between her husband and her daughter. She wanted us to have the big plaza wedding, insisted on paying for it herself from her personal accounts. Marcus's parents were uncomfortable with the extravagance but gracious about it. We just want you to be happy, his mother, Linda, told me over tea at their small apartment in Flushing. Marcus has always had a good heart. He knows what matters in life. We trust his judgment, and we welcome you to our family. Their warmth stood in stark contrast to my father's cold disapproval. He refused to walk me down the aisle, refused to even RSVP to the wedding. My mother begged him to reconsider, but he was immovable. She's made her choice, he told my mother within my earshot. Now she can live with it. The morning of my wedding, I woke up in my childhood bedroom in our townhouse on the Upper East Side, sunlight streaming through the silk curtains my mother had chosen when I was 16. The room was exactly as I'd left it when I moved out briefly for college, pale blue walls, white furniture, photographs from my privileged childhood lining the dresser. Pictures of me at horse riding lessons in Connecticut, at our summer house in Southampton, at various charity galas with my father, both of us dressed to the nines. I stared at those photos, at the girl I used to be, and wondered if she'd recognize the woman I was becoming. My mother came in with coffee and croissants from Maison Kaiser, the French bakery on Madison Avenue we'd been going to since I was a little girl. She set the tray down on my bed and sat beside me, smoothing my hair like she used to when I was small. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" "Like I'm making the biggest decision of my life," I admitted. "And like I'm losing my father in the process." "He's not coming," she said softly. It wasn't a question. "No, Mom. He's not coming." She pulled me into her arms, and I breathed in her familiar scent, Chanel No. 5 and the lavender sachets she kept in her closet. "I'm so sorry, baby. I tried everything. I begged him, I reasoned with him, I even threatened to leave him if he didn't come. But he's stubborn, and his pride is hurt, and he can't see past it." "Did he say anything? Any message for me?" My mother's face crumpled slightly. He said he loves you. That he'll always love you. But that he can't watch you make what he considers a mistake. He thinks if he doesn't enable it, you'll realize you're wrong and come back. That's not going to happen, Mom. I know. I told him that. But your father has convinced himself that this is just a phase, that Marcus is some kind of rebellion against him. He doesn't understand that you genuinely love this man. Because he's never asked, I said, feeling the familiar anger rising. He's never sat down with me and asked why I love Marcus, what I see in him, what makes me happy. He just made his judgment and expected me to fall in line. That's how your father operates. He's used to people doing what he says. In business, it works. In family, She trailed off, shaking her head. We sat in silence for a moment, holding each other. Finally, my mother pulled back and cupped my face in her hands. "You look beautiful," she said. "And you're going to be a beautiful bride. Don't let your father's absence ruin this day. You're marrying a man who loves you, who sees you, who wants to build a life with you. That's what matters." "I know. I just wish Dad could see it too. Maybe someday he will. But today is about you and Marcus. Focus on that." My bridesmaids arrived an hour later, my college roommate Sarah, my cousin Jennifer, and 2 friends from the literacy program where I'd met Marcus. They brought champagne and laughter and helped me get ready, doing my hair and makeup, helping me into my dress. The dress was simpler than the elaborate gown my mother had initially wanted me to wear. It was elegant and classic, with a fitted bodice and a flowing skirt, but it wasn't the fairy tale princess dress she'd envisioned for my wedding to Preston. This dress was me, understated, sophisticated, real. "You look stunning," Sarah said, adjusting my veil. "Marcus is going to lose his mind when he sees you." "I hope so," I said, smiling despite my nerves. My Uncle Richard, my father's younger brother who'd always been more easygoing than his older sibling, knocked on the door. "The car's here," he said. "You ready, kiddo?" Uncle Richard had agreed to walk me down the aisle when my father refused. It wasn't what I'd dreamed of, but he'd stepped up without hesitation, and I was grateful. "As ready as I'll ever be," I said. The Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom was breathtaking. My mother had outdone herself with the decorations, thousands of white roses, crystal chandeliers sparkling overhead, candlelight everywhere. It was beautiful and elegant and everything a society wedding should be, except for the gaping hole where my father should have been. When I walked down the aisle on Uncle Richard's arm, I made myself not look at the empty seat in the front row. Instead, I focused on Marcus, standing at the altar in a simple but well-tailored suit, his eyes locked on mine with such love and certainty that everything else faded away. He mouthed "You're beautiful" as I approached, and I felt tears prick my eyes. The ceremony itself was a blur of emotion. We'd written our own vows, and when Marcus spoke his voice shook slightly. "Alexandra, I promise to love you not despite who you are, but because of who you are. I promise to support your dreams, even when they scare me. I promise to stand beside you as an equal partner, not above you or below you, but with you. I promise to see you, really see you, every single day for the rest of our lives. And I promise that no matter what challenges we face, we'll face them together." When it was my turn, I had to pause to collect myself before speaking. "Marcus, you came into my life when I was living someone else's version of what my life should be. You showed me who I could be when I had the courage to choose for myself. You've never asked me to be anything other than who I am. You've never judged me for my privilege or my mistakes. You've just loved me, completely and unconditionally. I promise to love you the same way, to see you, to support you, to stand with you. I promise to be your partner in every sense of the word. And I promise that I will never, ever take you or this love for granted." There wasn't a dry eye in the room as we exchanged rings and the officiant pronounced us husband and wife. When Marcus kissed me, I heard cheers and applause, and for that moment, I forgot about everything except this man I'd chosen and the life we were about to build together. The reception was lovely. Marcus's family had come out in force, his parents, his grandmother, his 2 younger sisters, cousins, and aunts and uncles I'd been getting to know over the past year. They were warm and welcoming, treating me like I'd always been part of their family. My mother's side of the family was there too, most of them defying my father's implicit instruction to boycott. They came up to congratulate us, many of them pulling me aside to whisper that they thought I was making the right choice, that they admired my courage to follow my heart. "Your father is being an ass," my Aunt Caroline said bluntly. "He'll regret this someday, mark my words. But you go live your life, sweetheart. Be happy." During the father-daughter dance, traditionally the highlight of any wedding, I danced with Uncle Richard instead. The DJ played Unforgettable by Nat King Cole, the song my father and I were supposed to dance to. I tried not to cry as Uncle Richard twirled me around the dance floor. "He should be here," Uncle Richard said quietly. "My brother is making the biggest mistake of his life, and he's too damn stubborn to see it." "It's his choice," I said, though my voice cracked. "It's the wrong choice. But for what it's worth, Alex, I'm proud of you. You're stronger than I think even you realize." After that dance, Marcus swept me back onto the floor for our first dance as husband and wife. As he held me close and we swayed to At Last by Etta James, he whispered in my ear, "Are you okay?" "I'm married to you," I whispered back. "I'm better than okay. Your dad's an idiot for missing this." "Yeah, he is. But that's his loss, not ours." The party went late into the night. We danced, we laughed, we celebrated with people who genuinely cared about us. Marcus's teaching colleagues were there, telling embarrassing stories about him mixing up students' names in his first year. My friends from the literacy program shared how Marcus and I had met, making it sound like a romantic comedy meet cute rather than the awkward conversation over donated books that it actually was. Around midnight, my mother found me on the terrace, taking a breath of fresh air. "I have something for you," she said, handing me an envelope. "Don't open it now, just keep it safe." "What is it?" "Insurance," she said cryptically. "Your father doesn't know I'm giving this to you. But you're my daughter, and I'm not going to leave you high and dry just because he's being pig-headed. Promise me you'll keep it somewhere safe and only use it if you really need it." I hugged her tight. "Thank you, Mom. For everything. For being here, for supporting me, for loving me even when it puts you in a difficult position." "You're my baby girl," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I'll always be here for you, no matter what your father says or does." It wasn't until later, back in our hotel room at the plaza where we were spending our wedding night, that I opened the envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $50,000 and a note in my mother's handwriting. "Alexandra, this is for my inheritance from my mother, money your father can't touch. I hope you never need it, but if you do, it's here. Build your life on your own terms. I love you always." "Mom," I showed Marcus, and we both stared at the check in silence. "Your mom is amazing," he said finally. "She really is. But Marcus, I don't want to use this unless we absolutely have to. I want to make it on our own." "Agreed. We'll put it in savings. Emergency fund only." We did use some of it eventually, for the security deposit on our Astoria apartment and to cover bills in the lean months when I was job hunting. But we treated it as a loan to ourselves, setting aside money each month to pay it back. Within a year, we'd replenished the account. It felt important to prove, at least to ourselves, that we could manage without my family's money. "Your father called," she said quietly. "He wanted me to give you a message." "What message?" He said that as of today, you're financially cut off. The trust fund, your position at Harrison Industries, your credit cards, everything. He's removing you from his will. He said if you choose to marry beneath you, you can live beneath him too. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I'd known he was angry, but I hadn't expected this level of vindictiveness. "Alex, I have some money of my own," my mother said quickly. "Not much that he can't access, but some. I can help you." "And Marcus, no," I said firmly. "I don't want his money, and I don't want to put you in the middle of this more than you already are. Marcus and I will be fine. We'll make our own way." I believed it when I said it. I had a degree from Columbia, work experience, and Marcus had his teaching job. We'd be fine. We'd be more than fine. Looking back now, I had no idea how hard it would actually be. Our honeymoon was supposed to be 2 weeks in Bali, a gift from my mother that she'd booked and paid for months ago. We cancelled it and took the refund, using the money instead for a security deposit on a small one-bedroom apartment in Astoria, Queens. It felt like a more practical use of the funds, though I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a pang of regret when I saw photos of friends vacationing in exotic locations. The apartment hunt had been eye-opening. I'd never had to look for my own place before. I'd gone from my parents' townhouse to a Columbia dorm to a luxury apartment my father owned on the Upper West Side where I'd lived rent-free. Now, Marcus and I were touring apartments with peeling paint, ancient appliances, and landlords who wanted last month, security deposit, and proof of income before they'd even consider our application. We finally found a place on a tree-lined street in Astoria, in a building that had seen better days but had good bones. It was a third-floor walk-up, no elevator, which meant hauling groceries up 3 flights of stairs, with a view of the street where kids played stickball in the summer and neighbors sat on stoops gossiping in multiple languages. The apartment itself was small, maybe 600 square feet total. The kitchen was barely big enough for one person to cook in, with a vintage stove that only had 3 working burners and a refrigerator that hummed loudly enough to hear in the bedroom. The bathroom had ancient pink tiles and a shower with water pressure that fluctuated wildly between scalding and freezing with no warning. The bedroom could barely fit our queen-size bed and a dresser. But it was ours. We painted the walls ourselves, spending a sweaty weekend in July transforming dingy white into a warm cream color that made the space feel bigger and brighter. We bought second-hand furniture from a thrift store in Long Island City, a couch that sagged in the middle but was comfortable enough, a coffee table with a few scratches but solid construction, a kitchen table with mismatched chairs. Marcus's mother gave us dishes and cookware from her own kitchen, insisting she had duplicates. My mother snuck me some nice sheets and towels, bought during one of our clandestine lunch meetings. Between family contributions and thrift store finds, we cobbled together a home. The neighborhood was a revelation. Our building was predominantly Greek and Hispanic families, many of them immigrants who'd come to America seeking better lives for their children. Our next-door neighbor, Mrs. Papadopoulos, was a widow in her 70s who'd lived in the building for 40 years. She spoke limited English but would leave baklava and spanakopita outside our door, knocking and then scurrying away before we could thank her. Downstairs lived the Rodriguez family, Maria and Carlos and their 3 kids. The oldest, Sophia, was one of Marcus's students, which is how we'd heard about the apartment in the first place. Maria would invite us for dinner sometimes, huge family meals with homemade enchiladas and rice and beans, everyone talking over each other in a mix of Spanish and English. It was so different from my life on the Upper East Side, where I'd barely known my neighbors beyond polite nods in the elevator. Here, everyone knew everyone else's business. When Marcus got home from school, kids would run up to him on the street, excited to see Mr. Chen outside of class. When I came home from job interviews looking dejected, Mrs. Papadopoulos would somehow know and leave comfort food at our door. "This is what community feels like," Marcus told me one evening as we ate dinner at our little kitchen table, the sounds of the neighborhood drifting through our open windows. "It's not about how much money you have or what your address is. It's about people looking out for each other." He was right, but the adjustment was still hard. I'd never had to worry about money before, and suddenly, every purchase was a calculation. Could we afford to order pizza, or should we make pasta at home? Was that shirt I wanted a necessity or an indulgence? Did we really need cable, or could we make do with Netflix? I started tracking our expenses in a notebook, something that would have been unthinkable in my old life. Rent. $1,800. Utilities. Roughly $150. Groceries. We aimed for $300 a month, which meant shopping sales, using coupons, buying generic brands. Student loan payments for Marcus. $400. Metro cards for both of us. $260. Phone bills. $120. Internet. $50. Marcus's teaching salary was $52,000 a year, which came out to about $3,200 a month after taxes and his pension contribution. That meant we had maybe $500 left over each month after basic expenses for everything else: emergencies, clothes, entertainment, savings. It was doable, but barely. And it meant I needed to find a job, fast. I started job hunting immediately, but I quickly discovered that my degree and experience meant less than I thought without my father's name behind them. My resume looked good on paper: Columbia graduate, 3 years of marketing experience at Harrison Industries. But during interviews, it became clear that hiring managers saw through the facade. "Talk me through your biggest accomplishment at Harrison Industries," one interviewer asked during what I thought was a promising interview at a mid-size marketing firm in Midtown. "I led the rebrand of one of our flagship properties," I said confidently. "Increased pre-sales by 25% through targeted digital campaigns and influencer partnerships." "Impressive. And how big was your team?" "I had 2 junior associates reporting to me and worked closely with our external agency." "Who hired the agency?" I hesitated. "My father." "And who approved the budget for the campaign?" My father." The interviewer nodded, making a note. "And presumably your father was quite involved in the strategy discussions?" I wanted to lie, to claim I'd done it all myself. But I couldn't. "He provided strategic direction, yes." The interview went downhill from there. I didn't get a call back. It was the same story at interview after interview. My resume showed I'd only worked at one company, in a role I'd clearly been handed rather than earned. Any successes could be attributed to my father's involvement or the resources he'd provided. I had no track record of achieving things on my own, no proof that I could succeed in a competitive environment where my last name didn't open doors. "We're looking for someone with more diverse experience," one hiring manager told me gently after I'd bombed yet another interview. "Your resume shows you've only worked at one company, in a role you were likely given rather than earned." "I'm sorry, but we need someone who's proven themselves in a more competitive environment." It was brutal and humbling and occasionally humiliating. I'd send out dozens of resumes and get maybe 2 interview requests. I'd prepare extensively for those interviews, researching the company, practicing my answers, dressing professionally in the few nice outfits I still owned from my old life. And then I'd sit across from hiring managers who would politely but firmly tell me I wasn't what they were looking for. I applied for positions I was overqualified for: administrative assistant, junior marketing coordinator, social media manager. I applied for positions I was underqualified for, hoping someone would give me a chance to prove myself. I applied for everything and anything, growing more desperate as our savings dwindled and the pressure to contribute financially mounted. Marcus never pressured me, never complained about being the sole breadwinner. But I felt the weight of it anyway. I'd watch him grade papers late into the night after teaching all day, planning lessons, and worrying about his students, all while carrying the burden of supporting both of us. It wasn't fair to him, and it wasn't the partnership I'd promised we'd have. The rejection started to wear on me. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., unable to sleep, spiraling into anxiety about money and jobs and whether I'd made a terrible mistake. I'd stand in our tiny bathroom, looking at my reflection, and wonder if my father had been right. Maybe I wasn't capable of making it on my own. Maybe I'd been fooling myself, thinking I could be more than just Richard Harrison's daughter. "You're spiraling," Marcus would say gently when he found me like that. "Come back to bed. It's going to be okay." "How do you know?" I'd ask, tears streaming down my face. What if I can't find a job? What if I'm just useless? "You're not useless. You're talented and smart and capable. The job market is tough right now, and you're fighting against assumptions about who you are based on where you came from. But someone's going to see past that. Someone's going to give you a chance." 3 months after the wedding, that someone finally appeared. Her name was Diane Rodriguez, and she ran a small nonprofit called New Beginnings that worked with homeless youth in the Bronx. The organization had a tiny budget, a dedicated staff of 5, and a mission I believed in deeply. The position was assistant marketing coordinator, essentially an entry-level role despite my years of experience. The salary was $35,000 a year, less than half what I'd made at Harrison Industries. There was no fancy office, no expense account, no team reporting to me. Just a desk in a cramped office above a bodega on Grand Concourse, a laptop that took 5 minutes to boot up, and work that desperately needed doing. The interview was unlike any I'd had before. Diane didn't ask about my accomplishments at Harrison Industries or my connections or my pedigree. She asked why I wanted to work in nonprofit, what I knew about the homeless youth population, and what skills I could bring to an organization with almost no budget. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this," Diane said, leaning back in her creaky desk chair. "This job is hard. The pay is terrible. The hours are long. You'll be doing everything from grant writing to stuffing envelopes to scrubbing toilets if that's what needs doing. We can't afford to hire specialists, so everyone wears multiple hats. You'll be asked to do things you've never done before, figure out solutions with no resources, and work with populations that will break your heart. Why on earth would someone with your background want this job?" I thought about all the polished, perfect answers I'd given in other interviews. About positioning myself as the ideal candidate, highlighting my strengths, downplaying my weaknesses. But something about Diane's directness made me want to be honest. "Because I need to prove to myself that I can do something real," I said. "Something that matters. I've spent my whole life in a bubble of privilege, having things handed to me because of who my father is. And yeah, I could probably leverage those connections to get a comfortable job somewhere, doing work I don't care about for people I don't respect. But I don't want that life anymore. I want to do work that makes a difference, even if it's hard, even if it doesn't pay well. I want to earn my place somewhere, not have it given to me." Diane studied me for a long moment. "Your father is Richard Harrison, right? Harrison Industries?" "Yes. And he cut you off when you married a teacher instead of whoever he wanted you to marry? How did you know that?" She smiled slightly. "It's a smaller world than you think, especially in New York nonprofit circles. Your husband teaches at PS 145, right? My nephew is in his class." "Carlos Rodriguez?" I blinked. "Carlos is your nephew?" "He is. Smart kid, bit of a troublemaker, but Marcus has been great with him. Carlos comes home talking about Mr. Chen all the time. When I saw your resume with the same last name, I put 2 and 2 together. Did some asking around about you. Heard you'd walked away from your father's money to marry for love. That takes guts." "It's been harder than I expected," I admitted. "I bet. But here's the thing, Alex, can I call you Alex? Please. The work we do here, it's not glamorous. We're fighting for scraps of funding, competing with bigger organizations that have better connections and fancier offices. We're trying to help kids who've been dealt terrible hands, kids aging out of foster care with nowhere to go, kids fleeing abusive homes, kids struggling with addiction and mental health issues. It's heartbreaking work, and a lot of days you're going to feel like you're failing more than you're succeeding. I understand. Do you? Because I've had privileged people come through here before, wanting to help or make a difference. They last maybe 6 months before they realize how hard it is, how little recognition they get, how frustrating it is to work without resources. They get tired of the struggle and move on to something easier. I can't afford to hire someone who's going to burn out and leave. I need someone who's going to stay, who's going to fight, who's going to care even when it's hard. I'll stay, I said firmly. I'll fight. I'll care. I promise you, Diane, I'm not looking for easy. I'm looking for meaningful. And I'm willing to work harder than anyone to prove I belong here. She looked at me for another long moment, then extended her hand. Okay. When can you start? I don't care where you came from or who your father is, she told me on my first day. What I care about is whether you can do the work. You'll be starting from the bottom, doing whatever needs doing, stuffing envelopes, making coffee, data entry, cold calling donors. If you prove yourself, you'll move up. If you don't, you won't last long here. Clear? Crystal clear, I said. I threw myself into the work with an intensity that surprised everyone, including myself. I came in early, stayed late, volunteered for every project no one else wanted. I learned skills I'd never needed before: how to write grant proposals, how to organize fundraising events on a shoestring budget, how to talk to donors about impact instead of just asking for money. Diane noticed. After 2 months, she called me into her office. "You're doing good work, Alex," she said. "Better than I expected, honestly. Most people with your background wouldn't last a week doing the grunt work you've been doing." "I'm not most people with my background," I said. "I'm starting to see that. How would you feel about taking on more responsibility? I need someone to help coordinate our annual gala. It's our biggest fundraiser of the year. I'll still oversee everything, but you'd be handling a lot of the logistics and donor outreach." It was exactly the kind of opportunity I'd been hoping for. "I'd love to." The gala was in 3 months, which meant I basically lived at the office for the next 12 weeks. Marcus was understanding, even as I missed dinners and fell asleep on the couch surrounded by spreadsheets and donor lists. "I'm proud of you," he'd say, bringing me tea while I worked late into the night at our tiny kitchen table. "You're doing something that matters." "I'm barely making enough to contribute to our expenses," I said, frustrated. "You're carrying us financially." "We're partners," he reminded me. "Right now, I make more money. In a few years, who knows? Maybe you'll be the one carrying us. It doesn't matter as long as we're in it together." That's what I loved about Marcus. He never made me feel less than, never made me feel like I had to prove my worth through my paycheck. We were a team. The gala was a success. We exceeded our fundraising goal by 30%, and I got glowing feedback from board members and donors. Diane promoted me to marketing manager, with a modest raise that still felt like a victory. "You've earned this," she said. "You came in here as Richard Harrison's privileged daughter, and you've worked your ass off to become Alex Chen, a damn good nonprofit marketer." I respect the hell out of that. 6 months had passed since my wedding. 6 months since my father had cut me off and told me I'd made my choice. 6 months of struggling and learning and growing in ways I never could have if I'd stayed in my gilded cage. I missed my mother terribly. We'd talk on the phone when my father wasn't around, meeting for quick lunches in Midtown where we were less likely to be spotted by anyone who might report back to him. She'd slip me a little cash sometimes, which I initially refused but eventually accepted when our credit card bill got too high. "He asks about you sometimes," she told me over coffee at a small CAF near Grand Central. "Late at night, when he thinks I'm asleep. I've heard him in his study, looking at photos from when you were little." "Then he should call me," I said, my voice harder than I intended. "He's the one who cut me off. He's the one who said I was dead to him. If he misses me, he knows where to find me. You know your father. His pride won't let him admit he was wrong. Then we're at an impasse." My mother squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, you know. The way you've handled all of this, the way you've built a life for yourself. You're stronger than I ever was. You're strong too, Mom. You just show it differently." What I didn't know was that my father's empire was crumbling. Harrison Industries had overextended itself on a massive development project in downtown Brooklyn, a luxury high-rise complex that was supposed to be the crown jewel of his portfolio. The project had hit delay after delay, permit issues, construction problems, environmental concerns. Money was hemorrhaging, investors were getting nervous, and my father was desperate for a solution. He needed a white knight, someone with deep pockets and a reputation for turning troubled projects around. Someone like Chen Industries. I didn't know that Chen Industries existed. Marcus had never mentioned it. Why would he? As far as I knew, He was just a high school teacher from Flushing, the son of grocery store owners. The truth was so much more complicated. Marcus's parents did own a grocery store. But his father, David Chen, was also a silent partner in one of the most successful private equity firms in Asia. David had immigrated to the US in the 1980s with very little money, worked brutal hours at his grocery store while putting himself through night school, and built a small empire through smart investments and an uncanny ability to spot undervalued opportunities. He'd kept his success quiet, not wanting his family to be targets or to change the humble, hard-working values he'd instilled in Marcus and his siblings. The grocery store was real, it was his first business, the one he'd started with, and he'd never sold it because it reminded him where he came from. Marcus had grown up knowing about his father's business success but not flaunting it. He'd chosen teaching because he genuinely loved it, because he wanted to make a difference in ways that money couldn't buy. He'd never told me about Chen Industries because he wanted to be sure I loved him for who he was, not what his family had. And I had. I'd fallen in love with a teacher from Queens, not knowing he was the son of a business mogul who could have bought and sold my father's company 10 times over. The irony was almost funny. My father had cut me off for marrying a poor man, when in reality, I'd married into a family far wealthier than my own. If he'd bothered to look past his prejudice, if he'd actually gotten to know Marcus and his family, he would have discovered that this nobody from Queens was the best business connection I could have possibly made. But he hadn't looked. He'd just assumed and judged and cut me out of his life. I found out the truth on a Tuesday evening in late November. Marcus and I were making dinner in our tiny kitchen, stir-fry with vegetables from his parents' store, when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "It's my dad. I should take this." He stepped into the bedroom, and I continued cooking, not thinking much of it. But when he came back 20 minutes later, his face was troubled. "We need to talk," he said. My heart sank. Those 4 words were never good. "What's wrong? Is your family okay?" "Everyone's fine. But there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago." We sat down on our second-hand couch, dinner forgotten. Marcus took my hands in his. "My father owns Chen Industries," he said. "It's a private equity firm based in Hong Kong with offices in New York, Shanghai, and Singapore. They specialize in real estate development and infrastructure projects. My dad is the founder and CEO." I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. "Your dad, the grocery store owner, is a CEO?" "He's both. The grocery store was his first business, and he kept it running even after Chen Industries took off. It's a reminder of where he started, and it employs people from the neighborhood who might not find work elsewhere. But yes, he's also running a multi-billion-dollar company." "Multi-billion?" I felt dizzy. "Marcus, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted you to love me for me, not my family's money. I've seen what wealth does to people, how it changes relationships. When we met, you were dating Preston Ashford, a guy from the right family with the right connections. I didn't want to be another rich guy you dated because it made sense on paper. I wanted us to be real." "We are real," I said, still trying to wrap my head around this revelation. "We've been struggling to pay our bills, cutting coupons, living in this tiny apartment, and your family has billions?" "I'm a teacher by choice, Alex. I make a teacher's salary. My father's money is his, not mine. I didn't want to touch it because I wanted to prove I could make it on my own, just like he did. And I wanted you to see that I didn't need wealth to be worthy of you." "I never needed you to be wealthy," I said, tears forming. "I chose you because of who you are, your kindness, your passion, your integrity. The fact that you're wealthy doesn't change that." "But Marcus, we've been struggling. We could have had help." "I know, and I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. But I was afraid. I was afraid that if you knew, it would change things between us." that you'd feel like you'd just traded one wealthy family for another. I wanted to be angry with him for keeping this secret, but I understood why he'd done it. In his position, I might have done the same thing. So why are you telling me now? Marcus took a deep breath. Because your father reached out to Chen Industries. He needs help with that Brooklyn development project that's been in the news. It's hemorrhaging money, and he's desperate for a white knight investor. He sent a formal proposal to my father's office, asking for a meeting to discuss a potential partnership. The irony hit me like a physical blow. My father, who'd disowned me for marrying a poor teacher, was now begging that teacher's father for a business deal. Does he know? I asked. Does my father know that you're David Chen's son? Not yet. The proposal went through official channels, and our company policy is to evaluate all opportunities on their merits before revealing personal connections. But we have to tell him, Alex. We can't move forward with any kind of deal without disclosing that I'm married to his daughter. What does your father want to do? He wants to meet with us first. Talk about how we want to handle this. The business opportunity is legitimate, Harrison Industries is in trouble, but the Brooklyn project has potential if it's managed correctly. Dad thinks he can turn it around. But he won't move forward without your blessing. My blessing? You're part of our family now. If we do this deal, it will force your father to confront the fact that he cut off his daughter for marrying into a family that's now his only hope of saving his company. That's going to be complicated and potentially painful for everyone involved. Dad won't put you through that unless you're okay with it. I thought about my father, sitting in his office at Harrison Industries, probably stressed and desperate as his empire crumbled around him. I thought about how he'd refused to even attend my wedding, how he'd cut me off without a second thought, how he'd told my mother I was dead to him. Part of me wanted him to fail. Part of me wanted him to lose everything and realize too late what he'd thrown away. But a bigger part of me, the part that still remembered being Daddy's little girl, didn't want him to suffer. I need to think about it, I told Marcus. And I need to meet your father properly. As his daughter-in-law, not just as Marcus's wife from the grocery store family. Of course. How about this weekend? My parents are hosting a small dinner at their home in Alpine, New Jersey. Nothing fancy, just family. They have a home in Alpine? Alpine was one of the wealthiest zip codes in America, where homes regularly sold for tens of millions of dollars. Marcus had the grace to look sheepish. Yeah. And a penthouse in Tribeca. And a place in Hong Kong. But the Alpine house is where they spend most of their time when they're in the States. It's where I grew up, actually. The Flushing apartment is just where Dad keeps the grocery store office. My head was spinning. I'd been married to Marcus for 6 months, had Sunday dinners with his parents at their Flushing apartment, played mahjong with his grandmother, helped out at the grocery store. And all that time, they'd been living a completely different life that I'd known nothing about. This is a lot to process, I said. I know. And I'm sorry for keeping it from you. But Alex, nothing about us changes. I'm still the same person you fell in love with. My family is still the same family you've been getting to know. We just also happen to have a lot of money that we don't talk about or flaunt. He was right. Marcus was still Marcus, still the man who graded papers at our kitchen table, who volunteered at the after-school program, who brought me coffee in bed on Saturday mornings. The money didn't change who he was. But it did change our situation with my father. And that was something we needed to figure out together. That weekend, Marcus and I drove out to Alpine in his beat-up Honda Civic, the one I'd assumed was all he could afford but now realized was probably a choice. The Chen family home was stunning, a modern architectural masterpiece set on 3 acres of perfectly landscaped property with views of the Manhattan skyline across the Hudson River. This is where you grew up? I asked as we pulled through the gates. Yeah. Dad designed it himself. He wanted something that reflected both his Chinese heritage and his American success. Come on, everyone's excited to see you. Linda Chen, Marcus's mother, greeted us at the door with her usual warmth, though now I noticed details I'd missed before: the understated but clearly expensive jewelry, the designer clothes that I'd initially taken for well-made knockoffs, the original artwork on the walls. David Chen was in his study, a room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. He stood when we entered, a tall man in his 60s with silver-streaked hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. "Alexandra," he said, shaking my hand. "I'm glad we finally have a chance to talk properly. Please, sit." Marcus's father had always been kind to me, but there was a new formality to this meeting. This wasn't just Sunday dinner chat. This was business. "I understand my son has finally told you about our family's other enterprises," David said with a slight smile. "I apologize for the deception, but I supported Marcus's decision to keep it quiet initially. He wanted to be sure of your feelings for him." "I understand," I said. "And I appreciate that, even if it was a shock." "I'm sure it was. Now, regarding your father's proposal. I've reviewed the Harrison Industries situation thoroughly. The Brooklyn project is troubled but salvageable. Your father made some poor decisions, overextended his financing, and underestimated the complexity of the permits and community relations. But the underlying opportunity is sound. With proper management and adequate capital, it could be quite profitable." "So you're going to help him?" "That depends on several factors," David said. "From a pure business perspective, yes, it makes sense. But this is complicated by family considerations. Your father cut you off for marrying my son. He called Marcus a nobody from Queens, implied he was marrying you for money he thought you'd inherit. Now he's coming to us, hat in hand, asking for that same family to save his company." The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "I want you to decide what's best for you," David said gently. "If we do this deal, your father will have to confront his mistakes. He'll have to acknowledge that he was wrong about Marcus, wrong about our family. That won't be easy for a proud man like Richard Harrison. It could lead to reconciliation, or it could make the rift between you even wider. I need to know what you want before we proceed." I thought about it carefully. Did I want my father to grovel? To admit he was wrong? Part of me did. But mostly, I just wanted my dad back. I wanted the man who'd taught me to ride a bike in Central Park, who'd helped me with my math homework, who'd been my hero before his expectations and pride got in the way. "I want you to make the best business decision," I said finally. "Don't let our family drama influence your judgment. If the deal makes sense, do it. If it doesn't, walk away. But if you do move forward, I want to be there when you tell my father the truth. He needs to hear it from me that I'm happy, that I made the right choice, that his cutting me off didn't destroy me, it freed me." David nodded approvingly. "You're stronger than he gave you credit for." I had to be. He didn't leave me much choice. Over the next 2 weeks, David and his team at Chen Industries conducted their due diligence on Harrison Industries. The conclusion was what he'd suspected: the company was in trouble but savable. The Brooklyn project could be turned around with an injection of capital and better management. From a business perspective, it was a good opportunity. The meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon at the Chen Industries offices in Tribeca. My father thought he was coming to pitch to potential investors. He had no idea he'd be walking into a room with his daughter and the family he'd scorned. I took the day off work, spent extra time getting ready that morning. I wanted to look successful, confident, happy. I chose a sleek navy dress I'd bought with my own money, paired with simple jewelry and heels. Not the designer labels I'd worn in my old life, but professional and polished nonetheless. Marcus met me at the Chen Industries building, a gleaming tower in Tribeca with stunning views of the Hudson. The offices were beautiful, modern, sophisticated, with art from emerging Asian artists and floor-to-ceiling windows. "You okay?" Marcus asked as we rode the elevator to the executive floor. "Nervous," I admitted. I haven't seen him in 6 months. You don't have to do this. We can tell him separately, let my father handle the business discussion. No. I want to be there. I need him to see that I'm okay, that I'm more than okay. David was already in the conference room when we arrived, along with 2 other executives from Chen Industries. Through the glass walls, I could see the conference table, the presentation materials laid out, the coffee service waiting. He'll be here in 5 minutes, David told us. Are you sure about this, Alexandra? I'm sure. When my father walked into that conference room, I watched his face go through a series of emotions: professional friendliness, confusion when he saw me, shock when he recognized Marcus, and finally, dawning horror when David Chen introduced himself. Mr. Harrison, David said smoothly, I believe you know my daughter-in-law, Alexandra. And this is my son, Marcus. Thank you for coming to discuss the Brooklyn project. Please, have a seat. My father stood frozen in the doorway, his face pale. For a moment, I thought he might turn around and leave. But his business instincts kicked in, and he sat down, though his eyes kept darting between Marcus and me. I don't understand, he said finally. Marcus is your son? Indeed. He's married to your daughter, as I'm sure you're aware, though I understand you chose not to attend their wedding. My father's jaw tightened. I was told Marcus was a public school teacher. He is, David confirmed. And an excellent one. He's chosen to pursue teaching despite having other options available to him. I'm very proud of his commitment to education and community service. But you run Chen Industries. I do. I also own a grocery store in Flushing where my wife and I started our American journey. We're a family of many facets, Mr. Harrison. We don't believe in defining ourselves solely by our bank accounts. The dig was subtle but clear. My father had defined himself and everyone else by wealth and status. He judged Marcus without knowing anything about him, and now he was paying the price for that prejudice. Mr. Harrison, David continued, we've reviewed your proposal regarding the Brooklyn development. From a business perspective, it has merit. Your company has overextended itself, but the underlying asset is sound. Chen Industries would be willing to provide the capital and expertise to turn the project around. I saw hope flicker in my father's eyes. However, David said, before we discuss terms, I think you owe your daughter an apology. My father's face flushed. This is a business meeting. This is a family matter that happens to have business implications, David corrected. You cut off your daughter for marrying my son, claiming he wasn't good enough for her. You refused to attend their wedding, told her she was dead to you, removed her from your will. All because you thought Marcus was poor and beneath her. I didn't know, you didn't bother to know, I interrupted, speaking for the first time. You didn't ask questions, didn't try to meet his family, didn't care about who he was as a person. You just saw a public school teacher and decided he wasn't worthy. But you know what, Dad? Marcus is worth 10 of Preston Ashford. He's kind, hardworking, principled. He loves me for who I am, not for your money or your connections. And his family welcomed me with open arms, no conditions, no judgments. Alexandra, I'm not finished. You cut me off thinking I'd fail, thinking I'd come crawling back. But I didn't fail. I got a job on my own merit, I'm doing work that actually matters, and I'm happier than I've ever been. I don't need your money or your approval. I never did. My father looked older than I remembered, the lines on his face deeper. I thought I was protecting you. From what? From being happy? From making my own choices? From making a mistake? From throwing your life away on someone who couldn't provide for you? Marcus provides plenty, I said. Just not in the ways you value. He provides love, support, partnership, respect. That's worth more than all the trust funds in the world. David cleared his throat. Mr. Harrison, I'm willing to move forward with this deal on one condition: you reconcile with your daughter. This isn't about forcing you to change your values or admit you were wrong about money and status. This is about acknowledging that you hurt your child, and that hurt needs to be addressed before we can be partners. My father was quiet for a long moment. I could see him struggling, his pride warring with his need to save his company. Finally, he turned to me. I'm sorry, Alexandra. I was wrong. Not about the money, I still think financial security matters. But I was wrong to cut you off, wrong to judge Marcus without knowing him, wrong to miss your wedding. I was angry and hurt that you chose someone I didn't approve of, and I lashed out. That was unfair to you. It wasn't a perfect apology. It wasn't everything I'd wanted to hear. But it was something. Thank you, I said quietly. That means a lot. Can we start over? My father asked. I'd like to get to know Marcus properly. And I'd like my daughter back in my life. I looked at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. We can try, I said. But Dad, things have changed. I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago. I have my own life now, my own career, my own priorities. If we're going to rebuild our relationship, it has to be on equal terms. You can't expect me to just fall back into being your little girl who does what you say. I understand, my father said. Or at least, I'm willing to try to understand. David stood up, extending his hand to my father. Then let's discuss the terms of our partnership. I think we can work something out that benefits everyone involved. The business discussion that followed was technical and complex. Chin Industries would invest substantial capital in the Brooklyn project in exchange for a 40% stake in that specific development and a seat on the Harrison Industries board. David would have final say on all major decisions related to the Brooklyn project, and Chin Industries would provide management expertise to get it back on track. It was a tough deal for my father. He was essentially admitting he couldn't handle the project on his own and ceding significant control. But it was also his only option. Without Chin Industries' investment, Harrison Industries would likely go bankrupt within the year. My father agreed to the terms. Papers would be drawn up by both sides' attorneys, due diligence would continue, but the handshake deal was done. As the meeting wrapped up, my father turned to Marcus. I owe you an apology as well. I judged you unfairly, assumed things about you that weren't true. I'd like to make that right, if you're willing. Marcus shook his hand. I appreciate that, Mr. Harrison. I love your daughter very much. I promise you, I'll spend the rest of my life making sure she's happy. I'm starting to see that, my father said. And please, call me Richard. After my father left, I collapsed into one of the conference room chairs, emotionally exhausted. That was intense, I said. You were amazing, Marcus told me, squeezing my shoulder. I'm so proud of you. David smiled. You handled yourself with grace and strength, Alexandra. Your father is a lucky man to have you as a daughter, whether he fully realizes it yet or not. Thank you for making him apologize, I said. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Business is business, but family is family. I won't work with someone who's hurt my family without some acknowledgement of that hurt and effort to make amends. That's not negotiable. Over the next few months, my relationship with my father slowly began to heal. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick. There were awkward dinners, difficult conversations, moments where old hurts flared up. But we were both trying. My father made an effort to get to know Marcus, asking about his teaching, his students, his goals for education. They found common ground in their work ethic and their commitment to their communities, even if they expressed it in different ways. My mother was overjoyed to have her family back together, even if the dynamics had changed. We had family dinners at the Alpine House now, my parents getting to know the Chens, two very different families finding unexpected common ground. The Brooklyn project turned around under Chen Industries management. Within a year, it was back on track, pre-sales were strong, and Harrison Industries was stable again. My father learned a lot from working with David and his team about community engagement, sustainable development, long-term thinking versus quick profits. "Your father-in-law is teaching me things I should have learned years ago," he admitted to me over lunch one day. "He's brilliant, and more importantly, he has integrity. He cares about doing things right, not just doing things profitably." "That's where Marcus gets it from," I said. "I see that now. I'm sorry it took almost losing everything for me to open my eyes." As for me, I continued working at the nonprofit, got another promotion, and started teaching a class on nonprofit management at NYU. I loved my work, loved feeling like I was making a real difference. Marcus and I moved to a bigger apartment in Brooklyn, closer to his school. We could have afforded something much nicer with his family's wealth, but we chose a place that fit our lifestyle and values. We wanted to live in the community where Marcus taught, to be part of that neighborhood. My father did add me back to his will, but I asked him to direct my inheritance to a charitable foundation instead. I didn't need his money anymore. I had my own career, my own resources through the Chen family if I ever needed them. The foundation would do more good supporting education and youth programs than sitting in my bank account. Looking back now, getting cut off was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to figure out who I was independent of my father's wealth and expectations. It showed me what I was capable of when I had to stand on my own 2 feet. And it proved that the values I'd chosen, love, partnership, integrity, meaningful work, were the right ones, even when they came with a cost. My father learned too. He learned that worth isn't measured in bank accounts, that judgment based on social class is shallow and often wrong, and that pride can cost you the things that matter most. He almost lost his company and his daughter because he couldn't see past his own prejudices. 6 months after that confrontation in the conference room, we had a small family gathering at my parents' townhouse, my parents, Marcus, and me, his parents and grandmother. Over dinner, my father stood up to make a toast. "A year ago, I made the worst mistake of my life," he said. "I let my pride and my prejudices drive away my daughter. I thought I knew what was best for her, thought I could control her life and her choices. I was wrong about a lot of things, but most of all, I was wrong about what makes someone worthy. I judged Marcus and his family based on surface appearances and assumptions, and in doing so, I nearly destroyed my relationship with my daughter and my company." He turned to Marcus and his parents. "David, Linda, I want to thank you for giving me a second chance. For seeing past my mistakes and arrogance to the desperate father who just wanted to protect his child. And for being better people than I deserved." Then he turned to me. "Alexandra, I'm so proud of the woman you've become. Not because of anything I did, but despite the obstacles I put in your way. You've shown more strength, courage, and integrity than I ever gave you credit for. I'm honored to be your father, and I promise to spend the rest of my life earning that honor." I had tears in my eyes as I stood up and hugged him. It wasn't a perfect ending, we still had work to do, still had rough patches ahead. But it was a beginning. A chance to build something new, something better, something based on mutual respect rather than expectations and control. That night, as Marcus and I drove home to our Brooklyn apartment, I thought about how different my life was from what I'd imagined a year ago. I wasn't living on the Upper East Side in a luxury penthouse. I wasn't working at my father's company or attending charity galas in designer gowns. I was living in a modest apartment in Brooklyn, working at a nonprofit, married to a public school teacher. And I was happier than I'd ever been. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked, reaching over to take my hand. "Just how lucky I am," I said. "A year ago, I thought my life was falling apart. But really, it was all falling into place." "I love you," he said simply. "I love you too. And I'd choose you all over again, even if I knew what it would cost me. Even if my dad wasn't secretly a billionaire?" He teased. "Especially then." I fell in love with a teacher from Queens who wanted to change the world one student at a time. The billionaire part was just a surprise bonus. We both laughed, and I felt a contentment I'd never known in my old life. This was what happiness looked like, not designer clothes and trust funds, but love and purpose and the freedom to be yourself. My father had cut me off thinking it would teach me a lesson. It did, just not the one he intended. It taught me that I was stronger than I knew, that I could make it on my own, and that the things that really mattered, love, integrity, meaningful work, couldn't be bought with any amount of money. 6 months later, my father had come begging my poor husband's family for help. And in doing so, he'd learned the same lesson I had. That worth isn't measured in dollars, and the people you underestimate might just be the ones who save you in the end. It was an expensive lesson for both of us, but it was worth every penny. I still remember the exact moment my life fell apart. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late September, and I was sitting in my apartment in Brooklyn, scrolling through my phone when I saw the message from my mother. "We need to talk. Come home this weekend." Those 6 words should have been a warning sign, but I was naive back then. I thought maybe they wanted to discuss Thanksgiving plans or ask about my new job at the nonprofit in Manhattan. I had no idea that my younger sister Emma had been weaving a web of lies that would destroy everything I'd built with my family. I'm Sarah Mitchell, and this is the story of how I lost my family over a lie, and how 5 years later, that same lie brought us face to face in the most unexpected way possible. Part 1. The accusation. The drive from Brooklyn to our family home in Westchester County usually took about 40 minutes, but that Saturday, it felt like hours. I pulled into the driveway of the colonial house I'd grown up in, the one with the blue shutters and the oak tree in the front yard where Emma and I used to build fairy houses when we were kids. My father's car was there, and so was Emma's beat-up Honda Civic. I felt a knot forming in my stomach as I walked up the steps. Something was wrong. I could feel it in the air, heavy and oppressive like the humidity before a summer storm. Mom opened the door before I could knock. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. She'd been crying. My heart started racing. "Mom? What's wrong? Is someone sick?" She didn't answer, just stepped aside to let me in. Dad was sitting in the living room, his jaw set in that way it did when he was angry. Emma was on the couch, and when she looked up at me, I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Was it guilt? Triumph? I couldn't tell. "Sit down, Sarah," Dad said. His voice was cold, formal. This wasn't my dad who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped me move into my first apartment. This was a stranger. I sat in the armchair across from them, my hands trembling. "What's going on?" "Emma told us something very disturbing," Mom said, her voice shaking. "About what happened last Christmas." Last Christmas? I racked my brain trying to think of what could have possibly happened. We'd had a normal holiday. Emma had come home from her sophomore year at NYU, I'd taken time off from work, we'd exchanged gifts, watched movies, eaten too much food. It had been normal. Pleasant, even. "I don't understand," I said. Emma started crying then, big theatrical sobs that seemed rehearsed. "I didn't want to tell them," she said between gasps. "But I couldn't keep it inside anymore. What you did to me, what you said to me, what I said to you." I was completely lost now. "Emma, what are you talking about? Don't play dumb." Emma's voice rose, sharp and accusing. "On Christmas Eve, when everyone was asleep, you came to my room. You told me I was worthless, that I was wasting Mom and Dad's money at NYU, that I'd never amount to anything. You said I was an embarrassment to the family." The room spun. I gripped the arms of the chair, trying to process what I was hearing. "I never said any of that. Emma, I never came to your room. I don't know why you're saying this, but it's not true. Stop lying," she screamed. "You did. You've always been jealous of me. You've always thought you were better than me because you went to Columbia and I only got into NYU. You've always resented that mom and dad helped me with tuition. That's insane, I said, looking at my parents. Mom, Dad, you know me. You know I would never say something like that. I love Emma. I've always been proud of her. But when I looked at their faces, I saw doubt. They believed her. Emma's been having panic attacks, Mom said quietly. She's been seeing a therapist. She told her therapist what you said, and the therapist encouraged her to tell us. Why would she make this up, Sarah? I don't know. I was starting to panic now. But I didn't say those things. I swear to God, I didn't. Dad stood up. I think you should leave. Dad, please, get out of my house. I looked at Emma one more time. She was still crying, but when our eyes met, I saw it again. That flash of something that wasn't grief or pain. It was satisfaction. I drove back to Brooklyn in a daze, tears streaming down my face. I tried calling them that night, the next day, the day after that. Mom answered once to tell me that until I apologized and took responsibility for what I'd done, they didn't want to hear from me. Then she blocked my number. Part 2. The aftermath. The weeks that followed were the darkest of my life. I couldn't understand why Emma would lie about something so cruel, so destructive. We'd had our sisterly squabbles growing up, sure, but nothing that would warrant this level of betrayal. I remember the first Monday after being cut off, going to work like everything was normal. My co-workers at the Bronx Youth Initiative had no idea that my entire world had collapsed over the weekend. I sat through our morning meeting, discussing budget allocations and program outcomes, nodding and taking notes like a robot. My boss, Maria, pulled me aside afterward. You okay, Sarah? You seem off today. I'm fine, I lied. Just tired. But I wasn't fine. I went home that night and ugly cried for 3 hours straight. Jessica, my roommate, found me on the bathroom floor at midnight, mascara streaked down my face, phone in hand showing the 10th unanswered call to my mother. Oh honey, she said, sliding down next to me. Talk to me. What happened? So I told her everything. About Emma's accusation, about my parents choosing to believe her, about being essentially disowned over a lie. Jessica listened without interrupting, and when I was done, she just held me while I cried some more. This is insane, she finally said. Your sister sounds like she needs serious help. And your parents, I can't even imagine how you're feeling right now. I feel like I'm in a nightmare and I can't wake up, I admitted. Like any minute, my phone is going to ring and it'll be my mom saying there's been a terrible mistake, that of course they believe me. But it's not going to happen, is it? I don't know, Jessica said honestly. But whatever happens, you're not alone. You have me, you have your friends from work, you have people who love you and know who you really are. Over the next few weeks, I went through all the stages of grief. Denial first, maybe this was just a misunderstanding that would blow over. Then anger, how dare Emma do this to me, how dare my parents not even give me a chance to defend myself. Bargaining came next, if I could just get them to listen, if I could just make them see the truth. Then depression, where I could barely get out of bed some mornings. And finally, a kind of numb acceptance. I threw myself into work as a distraction. The Bronx Youth Initiative was understaffed and underfunded, so there was always more to do than hours in the day. I started coming in early, staying late, volunteering for extra projects. Maria noticed. Sarah, I appreciate your dedication, but you need to take care of yourself too, she told me one evening when she found me at my desk at 9 p.m. When's the last time you took a day off? I'm fine, I said automatically. You're not fine. You've lost weight, you have circles under your eyes, and you've been working yourself into the ground for weeks. What's going on? I broke down and told her about the situation with my family. Maria listened with increasing outrage. That's horrific, she said when I finished. Have you thought about confronting your sister directly? Demanding proof of what she claims you said? What proof could there be? It was supposedly just the two of us in her room. It's my word against hers, and they've already decided who they believe. There has to be something you can do. Can you talk to other family members? Maybe they can intervene. That's when I thought of Aunt Rachel. I reached out to my Aunt Rachel, my mom's sister, hoping she might be able to help me understand what was happening. We met for coffee at a small CAF in Greenwich Village, CAF Reggio on McDougal Street, a place we'd been going to since I was a teenager. The familiar smell of espresso and the vintage decor made me feel slightly more grounded. Rachel was waiting for me at our usual table in the back. She stood up and hugged me tight the moment she saw me. "Sarah, honey, I'm so glad you called. Your mother told me what happened." We sat down, and I told her everything: Emma's accusations, my parents' reaction, the way they'd cut me off without even really hearing my side. Rachel listened, her expression growing increasingly troubled. "Sarah," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand, "I believe you." Those 4 words made me start crying all over again. Someone believed me. "But I have to tell you something," Rachel continued, handing me a napkin. "Your mom called me last week. She told me what Emma said, and she asked me not to contact you. She said the whole family needed to present a united front." My stomach dropped. "Did you or you going to stop talking to me?" "Of course not. You're my niece, and I love you. But Sarah, I need you to understand something about your mother. When she makes up her mind about something, especially when it comes to protecting Emma, there's no changing it. Emma has always been the baby, the one who needed more help, more attention. And your mom, she enables it." "I know," I said quietly. "I've always known, somewhere deep down. But I thought they loved me too. I thought our bond was stronger than this." "They do love you. But fear is a powerful thing. Your mother is terrified that Emma is fragile, that she might hurt herself or fall apart. So when Emma came to her with this story about you emotionally abusing her, your mother's protective instincts went into overdrive. But what about protecting me? What about considering that maybe Emma was lying?" Rachel sighed. "I know. I've been thinking about this a lot since your mother called me. Do you remember when Emma was in middle school and she got caught shoplifting?" I nodded. "She said her friends peer pressured her into it." "Right. And your parents believed her, even though the store manager said Emma was the one who organized the whole thing. Or when she failed out of her first semester of community college before NYU? She blamed it on her professors being unfair." I remember. Mom and Dad hired her a tutor and paid for her to retake the classes. Exactly. There's a pattern here, Sarah. Emma does something wrong, creates a narrative where she's the victim, and your parents buy it. Every single time. I thought about all the times growing up when Emma had gotten away with things I never could have. The time she crashed Mom's car and blamed it on black ice, even though it was a clear sunny day in April. The time she borrowed my favorite necklace for a party and lost it, then claimed I'd misplaced it myself. The time she told our parents I'd been the one to break the antique vase in the living room, when I'd been at a friend's house all day. Each time, Mom and Dad had taken her side. Each time, I'd been too stunned or hurt to really fight back. I'd just absorbed the blame and moved on, telling myself that's what good big sisters do. "I've been an idiot," I said. "You've been a loving sister and daughter," Rachel corrected. "But yes, you've let them walk all over you. And now Emma has taken it to a whole new level. What should I do?" I asked Rachel. "How do I fight this?" "I don't think you can, honey. Not right now. Your parents have made their choice, and trying to force them to listen is just going to make things worse. You know how stubborn your mother is. So I just give up? Accept that I don't have a family anymore?" "No," Rachel said firmly. "You live your life. You focus on yourself. You build the life you want, independent of them. And you wait. Eventually, the truth has a way of coming out. Emma's lies always catch up with her eventually. This time won't be any different. And if it doesn't? What if they never know the truth? Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then you'll know that you're stronger than you ever thought possible. Because you'll have survived the worst betrayal imaginable and still kept going. That's something no one can take away from you. We talked for another hour, about lighter things, Rachel's work as a real estate agent, the vacation she was planning to Portugal, a book she thought I'd like. When we parted ways on the street corner, she hugged me again. I love you, Sarah. And I'm here whenever you need me. Don't forget that. I won't. Thank you, Aunt Rachel. For believing me. Always, she said. I tried to take her advice. I threw myself into my work at the nonprofit, where I coordinated programs for underserved youth in the Bronx. The kids we served had real problems: poverty, abuse, violence in their neighborhoods. My family drama suddenly felt smaller in comparison, though no less painful. I spent more time with my friends, went to therapy twice a week, started running in Prospect Park every morning before work. The running helped more than I expected. There was something meditative about the rhythm of my feet on the pavement, the burn in my lungs, the way my mind would go quiet for those precious 45 minutes. I'd start at the Grand Army Plaza entrance, run the 3-mile loop past the long meadow and around the lake. In the fall, the leaves turned brilliant shades of orange and red. In winter, I'd run through light snow, my breath visible in the cold air. Spring brought cherry blossoms that reminded me painfully of the ones in Westchester, the ones Emma and I used to play under as children. My therapist, Dr. Chen, had an office in Park Slope. She was a small woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner I appreciated. In our sessions, we talked about boundaries, about family dysfunction, about the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. You don't have to forgive them to move forward, she told me in one session. Forgiveness is something you do for yourself, not for them. But it doesn't mean you have to let them back into your life. I don't even know if I want them back in my life, I admitted. Is that terrible? They're my parents. I should want them. There's no should here, Sarah. Your parents chose to believe a lie over you without giving you a real chance to defend yourself. That's a profound betrayal. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to decide that you're better off without them. But part of me still misses them. I miss Sunday dinners and Mom's terrible jokes and Dad teaching me things in his workshop. I miss feeling like I belong somewhere. Of course you do. Grief isn't linear, and it's not just for death. You're grieving the loss of your family, the loss of the relationship you thought you had with them. That's valid, and it's going to take time. On the outside, I was functioning. I showed up to work, I smiled, I made small talk with my coworkers. I went to happy hours and dinner parties with friends. But on the inside, I was hollow, going through the motions of a life that no longer felt quite real. The hardest part was the holidays. Thanksgiving came and went without a word from my family. I spent it with my roommate Jessica and her family in their home in Montclair, New Jersey. The Johnsons were lovely, warm and welcoming and completely unlike my own family. Jessica's mom, Patricia, made an incredible spread. Turkey with all the trimmings, 3 kinds of pie, homemade cranberry sauce. Her dad, Robert, told corny jokes that made everyone groan. Her younger brother, Marcus, who was home from college, regaled us with stories about his fraternity's latest mishaps. It should have been perfect. They were kind to me, inclusive, treating me like I was one of the family. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was an intruder, that I didn't belong. When Patricia asked me to say grace before dinner, I broke down crying at the table. I'm so sorry, I said, mortified. This is my first Thanksgiving without my family. Oh honey, Patricia said, coming around the table to hug me. You don't need to apologize. Holidays are hard when you're missing people you love. But that was the thing, I wasn't sure I missed my parents anymore. I missed the parents I thought I had, the ones who would have believed me and stood by me. The real parents, the ones who'd cut me off so easily, I wasn't sure I knew them at all. Christmas was even worse. I stayed in my apartment, ordered Chinese food from the place on 7th Avenue, and watched old movies on Netflix. Jessica had invited me to spend it with her family again, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't pretend to be festive, couldn't force myself to smile through another family gathering that wasn't mine. At midnight on Christmas Eve, I broke down and looked at my mother's Facebook page. She'd posted pictures from their Christmas celebration, the tree decorated just like always, presents piled underneath, everyone smiling. Emma was there, front and center, wearing a red sweater I recognized as one I'd given her 3 years ago. The caption read, "Blessed to have such a wonderful daughter. Merry Christmas to all." Singular. Daughter. Not daughters. I closed the laptop and cried until I couldn't cry anymore. Marmalade, sensing my distress, climbed into my lap and purred. I held him close, grateful for at least one living creature who didn't judge me, who didn't care about family drama or lies or betrayal. He just cared that I fed him and gave him attention and scratched behind his ears in just the right spot. My birthday in January passed unacknowledged. I turned 27 alone in my apartment, with just Jessica and a couple of friends from work. We had cake from the bakery on 5th Street and watched a movie, and everyone tried very hard to pretend it wasn't sad. But it was sad. It was deeply, profoundly sad. You know what? I said to Jessica that night after everyone had left. I need to stop waiting for them to come around. I need to accept that this is my life now. Are you sure? Jessica asked gently. It's only been a few months. Maybe they won't, I interrupted. And I can't keep living in this limbo, hoping every day that my phone will ring and it'll be them wanting to make things right. It's killing me. I need to move on. Okay, Jessica said. So how do you do that? I don't know yet. But I'm going to figure it out. By March, I'd accepted that this was my new reality. My family was gone, and there was nothing I could do about it. I started the process of building a new life, one that didn't include them. It hurt like hell, but I was surviving. I saw Emma once, by complete chance, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in Union Square. I'd just left a meeting with a potential donor for our nonprofit and was walking to the subway when I spotted her across the street at a coffee shop. She was with a group of friends, laughing at something on her phone. She looked happy, carefree, completely unburdened by what she'd done to me. For a moment, I considered marching over there and confronting her in front of her friends. I wanted to scream at her, to demand answers, to make her face what she'd done. But what would that accomplish? She'd just deny it, or make me look crazy, or find some way to twist it around so she was still the victim. So instead, I stood there in the rain, watching my sister live her life without a care in the world while mine had been torn apart. I watched her throw her head back and laugh at something one of her friends said. I watched her take a selfie with her coffee cup. I watched her be happy, and I hated her for it. Then I turned around and walked to the subway, tears mixing with rain on my face. When I got home, I called Dr. Chan and booked an emergency session. I saw Emma today, I told her that evening. And I realized something. I don't think I can ever forgive her. Is that okay? Can I just not forgive her and move on anyway? Of course you can, Dr. Chen said. Forgiveness isn't mandatory for healing. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is accept what happened, acknowledge that it was wrong, and then build a life that isn't centered around that hurt. That's what I want to do. I want to stop thinking about them every day. I want to wake up and not immediately remember that I don't have a family anymore. I want to just be okay. Then that's what we'll work toward, she said. Part 3. Moving forward, the first year was the hardest, but slowly, things got better. I got a promotion at work in April, became the associate director of our youth programs. It came with more responsibility, more stress, but also more money and more fulfillment. I was making a real difference in kids' lives, and that mattered. The promotion meant I could afford to move to a better apartment. I found a sunny one-bedroom in Park Slope, on a quiet tree-lined street near Prospect Park. It had exposed brick walls, hardwood floors, and big windows that let in so much light. For the first time in months, I felt a little bit excited about something. Jessica helped me move in May, along with a few friends from work. We spent the day hauling boxes up 3 flights of stairs, arguing about where to put furniture, ordering pizza from the place on 7th Avenue. By evening, my new apartment was starting to look like a home. "This is really nice, Sarah," Jessica said, looking around. "I'm happy for you." "Thanks. I'm happy too. Or at least, I'm getting there." That summer, I adopted Marmalade from the shelter. I'd been thinking about getting a pet for a while, something to come home to, something to take care of that wasn't work-related. The shelter volunteer, a college student named Tyler, introduced me to several cats, but it was Marmalade who chose me. He was 3 years old, orange and white, with green eyes and a crooked tail from an old injury. He walked right up to me, rubbed against my legs, and started purring. When I picked him up, he nuzzled into my neck and I knew he was coming home with me. "He's been here for 6 months, Tyler told me. People usually want kittens, not adult cats. But he's a sweet guy, very affectionate. I think you two will be good together." He was right. Having Marmalade changed everything. Coming home to an empty apartment wasn't as lonely anymore. He'd greet me at the door, meowing for dinner, then curl up on my lap while I watched TV or read in the evenings. Sometimes I'd talk to him about my day, about the kids at work, about how I was feeling. He never judged, never offered unwanted advice. He just listened and purred. I dated a bit that summer, nothing serious. There was Tom, a middle school science teacher I met at a fundraising event for our nonprofit. He was nice, smart, easy to talk to. We went out a few times, dinner at a Thai place in the East Village, a movie in Union Square, drinks at a rooftop bar in Williamsburg. But it never progressed beyond that. There was a wall around my heart that I couldn't seem to take down, a voice that whispered he'll hurt you too eventually every time things started to feel real. We ended it mutually after about a month. "You're great," Tom said. "But I get the feeling you're not really ready for this." "I'm sorry," I told him. "You're right. I thought I was, but it's okay," he said kindly. "I hope you find what you're looking for." After Tom, I took a break from dating. I focused on work, on school. I'd started taking some graduate courses at Hunter College, thinking about maybe getting a master's in social work, on building a life that was full and meaningful even without romance or family. Aunt Rachel stayed in touch, meeting me for dinner once a month at our favorite Italian place in Little Italy, Lombardi's on Spring Street. We'd always get the same thing, margherita pizza, Caesar salad, a bottle of red wine to share. She'd give me updates about the family, carefully editing out the parts she thought would hurt too much, though I could read between the lines. Emma graduated, Rachel told me over pizza one evening in May, 2 years after everything fell apart. Summa cum laude, apparently. Good for her, I said, and I almost meant it. I was trying so hard to let go of the anger, the bitterness. Holding on to it was like drinking poison and expecting Emma to get sick. She got a job at some marketing firm in Manhattan, Rachel continued, watching my face carefully. Your mom posted about it on Facebook. I'm sure you could see it if you wanted to. I blocked them all, I admitted. About 6 months ago. I realized I was torturing myself, checking their pages constantly, seeing them live their lives without me. It was healthier to just not look. That was probably smart, Rachel said. Have you thought about therapy? I mean, I know you were going right after everything happened, but are you still? Yeah, I'm still seeing Dr. Chen. Twice a month now instead of weekly. She's been really helpful. Good. I worry about you, you know. You put on a brave face, but I know this has been incredibly hard. It has been, I admitted. But I'm okay. I'm actually okay most days now. I have my job, I have my apartment, I have marmalade. I have you. I have a life. It's not the life I thought I'd have, but it's mine. Rachel reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you, Sarah. You've handled this with so much grace and strength. Your parents are idiots for not seeing what an amazing daughter they have. I corrected softly. What an amazing daughter they had. By year 3, I'd mostly made peace with the situation. The sharp pain had dulled to a constant ache, like an old injury that acts up in bad weather. I still thought about my family, especially late at night when I couldn't sleep, but it didn't consume me anymore. I finished my master's degree in social work that spring and graduated in May with honors. The ceremony was bittersweet. All around me were families celebrating their graduates, parents with cameras, siblings with flowers, grandparents beaming with pride. I had Aunt Rachel, Jessica, and a handful of friends from my program. It was enough. It had to be enough. Your parents should be here, Rachel said, echoing the same thing she'd said at my master's graduation party. They're missing out on so much. I know, I said. And I did know. But their absence didn't hurt quite as much as it used to. Or maybe I'd just gotten better at living with the hurt. That summer, I started volunteering at a crisis hotline on weekends. It was run by a nonprofit called Lifeline NYC, and they were always looking for trained volunteers. I went through their intensive training program, 40 hours of learning how to talk to people in crisis, how to de-escalate situations, how to provide resources and support without judgment. My first night on the phones was terrifying. What if I said the wrong thing? What if I made things worse? But my supervisor, a woman named Carol who'd been volunteering for 15 years, was calm and reassuring. You're going to do great, she told me. Just remember your training. Listen more than you talk. Don't try to fix everything. Sometimes people just need to know someone cares. The calls ranged from difficult to heartbreaking. People struggling with depression, anxiety, addiction. People who'd lost jobs, homes, loved ones. People who were considering ending their lives. Each call was a reminder that my problems, as painful as they were, weren't the worst things that could happen to someone. There was something healing about it too. About helping others navigate their darkest moments. About being the person who listened without judgment, who offered support without conditions. Maybe I couldn't fix my own family situation, but I could make a difference in a stranger's life, even if just for the length of one phone call. You're one of our best volunteers, Carol told me one Saturday evening after a particularly difficult call. Have you ever thought about doing this professionally? Going back to school for counseling? I had thought about it, actually. My master's in social work had given me a foundation, but I was interested in clinical work, in therapy specifically. Maybe that was my path forward. Maybe helping others heal could help me heal too. Part 4. The years past year 4 brought more changes. I did go back to school, enrolling in a part-time doctoral program in clinical psychology at City College. It was ambitious, maybe even crazy, to think about getting a PhD while working full-time. But I'd learned over the past few years that throwing myself into challenges was how I coped. When I was busy, when I was working towards something, I didn't have time to dwell on what I'd lost. The coursework was intense. Statistics, research methods, cognitive psychology, developmental psychology. I'd spend my days at work, my evenings in class or studying, my weekends on the crisis hotline or writing papers. My social life suffered, but I told myself it was temporary. Once I finished my degree, once I became Dr. Sarah Mitchell, things would be different. Jessica moved out that fall. She'd gotten engaged to her boyfriend of 3 years, a lawyer named Michael, and they were moving to a bigger apartment in Astoria. I was happy for her, truly, but I'd also gotten used to having someone around. The apartment felt emptier with just me and Marmalade. "You should get a roommate," Jessica suggested as we packed up her things. "Or better yet, start dating again. You can't hide behind school and work forever." "I'm not hiding," I protested. "Sarah, when's the last time you went on a date? Or even to a party? You're 29 years old, and you're living like a nun." "I'm focused on my career." "You're scared," she said gently. "And I get it. What your family did to you was traumatic. But you can't let it stop you from living your life." Maybe she was right. Between work, classes, and volunteering, I barely had time to think about dating or socializing. But was I using busyness as an excuse to avoid getting close to people? Was I so afraid of being hurt again that I'd built walls so high no one could scale them? I thought about it for weeks after Jessica moved out. Then, at a work event in November, I met David. He was a third-year resident at Mount Sinai Hospital, covering a health fair we were hosting for families in the Bronx. He had kind eyes, an easy smile, and a self-deprecating sense of humor that immediately put me at ease. "So you work with at-risk youth?" he asked as we stood at the refreshment table. "That must be incredibly rewarding." "It is," I said. "Though it can be heartbreaking too. A lot of these kids have been through things no child should have to experience. I see that in the air all the time. Kids coming in with injuries from abuse, neglect, violence. It never gets easier." We talked for an hour, about our work, our passions, the challenges of trying to make a difference in a system that often felt broken. When the event ended, he asked for my number. "I'd like to take you to dinner sometime," he said. "If you're interested." I hesitated, all my old fears rising up. But then I thought about what Jessica had said. I couldn't hide forever. "I'd like that," I told him. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant in the West Village, not Lombardi's but a place called Lupa on Thompson Street. David was easy to talk to, genuinely interested in what I had to say. We talked about everything, our childhoods, our dreams, our favorite books and movies. I told him about my work, my studies, my volunteer work at the crisis hotline. "You're kind of amazing," he said over dessert. "Not a lot of people would choose to spend their free time helping strangers in crisis." "It helps me too," I admitted. "Makes my own problems feel smaller." "What kind of problems?" he asked gently. I hadn't planned to tell him about my family situation on the first date. But there was something about David, something safe and trustworthy, that made me want to open up. So I told him. About Emma's lie, about my parents cutting me off, about 5 years of estrangement. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing more troubled as the story unfolded. "That's horrible," he said when I finished. "I can't imagine what that must have been like for you." "It was the worst thing that ever happened to me," I said. "But I survived it. And in some ways, it made me stronger. I know who I am now, independent of my family. I know what I'm capable of handling." "My family's complicated too," he told me. "Not the same situation, but my parents got divorced when I was 12, and it was ugly. Really ugly. My dad remarried within a year, had a whole new family. My mom became bitter and angry. I was stuck in the middle, being used as a weapon by both of them. It took me years of therapy to realize that their dysfunction didn't have to define me." "Do you still talk to them?" "Sort of. I see my mom on holidays, my dad a couple times a year. But I keep them at arm's length emotionally. I can't let them back in, not fully. I can't risk being hurt like that again." I understood exactly what he meant. That's how I feel. Even if my parents wanted to reconcile tomorrow, I don't know if I could trust them again. They showed me who they really are, and I can't unknow that. We dated for 8 months. It was good, comfortable, easy, stable. David was kind, attentive, supportive of my goals. He understood the demands of my schedule, never complained when I had to cancel plans because of an exam or a crisis call. We'd meet for late dinners after his shifts, spend lazy Sunday mornings in my apartment with coffee and the Times, take walks in Central Park when we both had time. But something was missing. Not with him, he was wonderful. The problem was with me. I liked him, maybe even loved him in a way, but I was holding back. There was a part of my heart that remained locked, a wall I couldn't seem to take down no matter how hard I tried. David noticed. "You're always a little bit distant," he said one evening as we walked through Prospect Park. "Like you're only giving me 80% of yourself and keeping the rest locked away." "I'm sorry," I said. "I don't mean to be." "I know you don't. But Sarah, I can't compete with your fear. I can't prove to you that I won't hurt you if you won't let me in enough to try." We broke up in June, right before I was supposed to defend my dissertation proposal. It was mutual, sad, but ultimately necessary. "I think you need more time," he said when we met for coffee one last time. "You need to finish healing before you can really be with someone." "You're probably right," I admitted. "I'm sorry I couldn't be what you needed." "Don't be. You're an amazing person, Sarah. You've been through hell and you're still standing. You're still kind, still caring, still trying to help people. That takes incredible strength. Someday, when you're ready, you're going to make someone very happy." After David, I took a break from dating and focused on finishing my dissertation proposal and preparing for my qualifying exams. I passed in August, moved on to candidacy, and started the long process of collecting data for my research on trauma and resilience in young adults. The work was fascinating and deeply personal. I was studying how people who'd experienced significant family trauma in their teens and 20s developed resilience and rebuilt their lives. Every interview I conducted, every data point I collected, felt like I was also studying myself, trying to understand my own journey. I graduated in May of year 5, and Aunt Rachel threw me a small party at her apartment in the Upper West Side. My friends were there, my coworkers, people from my program. It was a good night, full of laughter and congratulations and hope for the future. "I'm so proud of you," Rachel said, hugging me tight. "Your parents should be here. They're missing out on so much." "I know," I said. And I did know. But their absence didn't hurt quite as much as it used to. I'd learned to celebrate my victories without them. Part 5. The call. It was a Tuesday in late October, almost exactly 5 years after that fateful day in my parents' living room, when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Sarah Mitchell?" The voice was professional, clinical. "Yes, this is she. This is Dr. Patel from Mount Sinai Hospital. I'm calling because your sister, Emma Mitchell, was brought into our emergency room about an hour ago. She's been in a serious car accident." The world stopped. My sister. My sister who I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. My sister who'd destroyed my life with a lie. Is she going to be okay? "She's stable, but she's going to need surgery. Her injuries are significant. We've been trying to reach your parents, but we haven't been able to get through. You're listed as her secondary emergency contact." Of course I was. I'd been her emergency contact since she'd moved to New York for college. She'd never updated it. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. I grabbed my coat and purse and ran out the door. It was raining, a cold October rain that soaked through my jacket as I waited for an Uber. The drive to the hospital felt like it took forever, my mind racing with questions. What kind of accident? How bad was it? Were my parents really unreachable, or had they just not picked up when they saw it was a hospital calling? And underneath all of those questions was a bigger one. Why was I going? After everything Emma had done to me, why did I care? But I knew the answer. Despite everything, she was still my sister. And I wasn't the kind of person who could turn my back on someone in need, even someone who'd turned their back on me. The emergency room was chaos when I arrived. A gunshot victim was being rushed in, nurses were shouting orders, machines were beeping. I gave my name at the desk and was directed to a waiting area. Dr. Patel found me there 20 minutes later. She was young, probably not much older than me, with kind eyes and tired lines around her mouth. "Miss Mitchell?" she said. "Thank you for coming so quickly. Your sister was very lucky." She was T-boned by a truck running a red light at the intersection of 2nd Avenue and 34th Street. The impact was on the passenger side, but she still sustained significant injuries. She has a fractured pelvis, a collapsed lung, and internal bleeding. We need to take her into surgery immediately. Have you reached my parents? Not yet. We've left several messages. Keep trying, I said. They need to know. In the meantime, we need someone to sign the consent forms for surgery. As next of kin, I'll sign them. Dr. Patel studied my face. Are you sure? This is a serious procedure. If you'd rather wait for your parents, my sister needs surgery now, right? We don't have time to wait. I'll sign. She handed me a clipboard with forms. I signed my name on the dotted lines, my hand surprisingly steady. Whatever had happened between Emma and me, whatever lies she'd told, I wasn't going to let her die because of a grudge. Can I see her? Before the surgery? Dr. Patel hesitated. She's unconscious. She hasn't woken up since the accident. I'd still like to see her. She led me through the maze of the emergency room to a curtained-off area. And there was Emma, my baby sister, hooked up to machines and monitors, her face pale and bruised, her body broken. I pulled a chair up next to her bed and took her hand. It was cold. I'm here, I whispered. I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm here. And you're going to be okay. You have to be okay. A tear rolled down my cheek, then another. 5 years of anger and hurt and betrayal, and all of it melted away in that moment. She was my sister. My annoying, complicated, lying sister. And I loved her. Part 6. The waiting. They took Emma into surgery at 8 p.m. Dr. Patel told me it would be several hours, maybe 5 or 6, depending on what they found when they opened her up. I settled into the surgical waiting room with my phone, calling Aunt Rachel to let her know what was happening. Oh my God, Rachel said. Is she going to be okay? They think so, but it's serious. I signed the consent forms for surgery. You did? Sarah, that's you're a better person than I am. I couldn't just leave her, I said. Can you keep trying to reach Mom and Dad? I've been calling too, but they have my number blocked. Of course. I'll drive over to their house if I have to. Thank you. I hung up and sat back in the uncomfortable plastic chair, staring at the clock on the wall. 8:15 p.m. It was going to be a long night. Other families were in the waiting room, all of us caught in the same limbo of hoping and praying and trying not to think about worst-case scenarios. An elderly man whose wife was having emergency heart surgery. A young couple whose teenage son had been in a skateboarding accident. A woman about my age whose mother had had a stroke. We didn't talk much, but there was a camaraderie in our shared anxiety. We were all waiting for news about someone we loved, all hoping for the best, all preparing for the worst. At 9:30, Rachel texted me. Got through to your mom. They're on their way. My stomach clenched. I hadn't seen my parents in 5 years. I had no idea what I was going to say to them, how they were going to react to seeing me. Would they be angry that I'd signed the forms? Grateful? Would they even acknowledge my presence? They arrived at 10:15, bursting through the waiting room doors like a hurricane. Mom looked older, her hair more gray than I remembered. Dad's face was drawn with worry. When they saw me, they both stopped dead. "Sarah," Mom said. "Just my name, nothing else." "Hi, Mom." "Hi, Dad." We stood there, looking at each other across the waiting room. 5 years of silence stretched between us like a chasm. "Where is she?" Dad asked. "Where's Emma?" "In surgery." "She's been in surgery for about 2 hours now." "What happened?" Mom's voice was shrill with panic. "They said there was an accident, but they didn't tell us anything else." I explained what Dr. Patel had told me, about the truck running the red light, about Emma's injuries, about the surgery. "You signed the consent forms?" Dad asked. "Someone had to. They couldn't wait." Mom's face crumpled. My baby. My baby girl." I wanted to hug her, to comfort her, but I didn't know if I was allowed. So I just stood there, watching my mother fall apart, feeling more like a stranger than a daughter. "You should sit down," I said finally. "It's going to be a while." We sat in a triangle of chairs, not touching, not really looking at each other. The silence was deafening. "How have you been?" Mom asked after a while, her voice small. "I've been okay," I said. "I got my master's degree in social work. I'm working at the same nonprofit, but I'm the director of programs now." "That's good," she said. That's really good, Sarah." Dad cleared his throat. "We've been meaning to." He stopped, shook his head. "This isn't the time." "No," I agreed. "It's not." We lapsed back into silence. An hour passed, then another. At midnight, Dr. Patel came out to give us an update. Emma was still in surgery, but things were going well. They'd repaired the damage to her lung and stopped the internal bleeding. Now they were working on setting her pelvis. "She's strong," Dr. Patel said. "She's fighting." "Can we see her?" Mom asked. "After the surgery?" "She'll be in the ICU for at least the first night, possibly longer. You can see her there, but only for a few minutes at a time." When Dr. Patel left, Mom turned to me. "Thank you," she said. "For being here. For signing the forms. For everything." "She's my sister," I said simply. "I know. I didn't think you'd." She trailed off, tears streaming down her face. "Didn't think I'd what?" "Come? Care?" "Mom, I've always cared. That never changed." Dad stood up abruptly. "I'm going to get some coffee. Does anyone want anything?" "I'll come with you," Mom said, standing too. They left together, and I was alone again. Rachel called at 1 a.m. "How is she?" "Still in surgery, but the doctor says it's going well." "And your parents?" "They're here." "It's awkward." "I bet. Do you want me to come?" "I can be there in half an hour." "No, it's okay. I'm managing." "Sarah, you don't always have to manage on your own. You're allowed to need support." "I know. But right now, I think I need to do this alone." Mom and Dad came back with coffee. Dad handed me a cup. "Light and sweet, right? That's how you always took it." "Yeah," I said, surprised he remembered. "Thanks." We drank our coffee in silence, watching the clock, waiting for news. Part 7. Recovery. Emma came out of surgery at 3 a.m. Dr. Patel looked exhausted but satisfied. "She did great," she said. "The surgery went exactly as planned. She's going to need physical therapy and a long recovery period, but barring any complications, she should make a full recovery." The relief was overwhelming. Mom started crying again, and this time, Dad cried too. I felt my own tears sliding down my face. "Can we see her?" I asked. She's being moved to the ICU now. Give them about 20 minutes to get her settled, then you can go in. But remember, only a few minutes, and she's going to be very out of it from the anesthesia. We waited the 20 minutes, then a nurse came to get us. Only 2 at a time, she said. You two go, I told my parents. I'll wait. Mom looked at me, something unreadable in her eyes. Come with us, she said. Please. So the 3 of us went together, following the nurse through the ICU to Emma's room. She looked so small in that hospital bed, tubes and wires everywhere, machines beeping steadily. But her color was better, and her breathing was strong. Emma? Mom said softly, taking her hand. Emma, honey, we're here. Emma's eyes fluttered open. They were unfocused, glazed from the drugs. Mom? I'm here, baby. Dad's here too. And Sarah. Emma's eyes found me. For a moment, she just stared, and I couldn't tell what she was thinking. Then she whispered, Sarah. You came. Of course I came, I said, moving closer. You're my sister. I'm sorry, she said, her words slurred. I'm so sorry. I lied. I lied about everything. Christmas. What you said. It wasn't true. None of it was true. The room went completely silent. Mom's face went white. Dad's jaw dropped. Emma, what are you saying? Mom asked. But Emma's eyes had closed again. She'd slipped back into unconsciousness. The nurse ushered us out. She needs to rest. You can come back in a couple hours. We walked back to the waiting room in stunned silence. When we got there, Mom sat down heavily, her face in her hands. Did she just say what I think she said? Dad asked. She said she lied, I said quietly. About Christmas. About what I supposedly said to her. But why would she? Mom looked up at me, and I saw the exact moment when everything clicked into place for her. Oh my God. Sarah. We believed her. We cut you off. We didn't even give you a chance to defend yourself. No, I said. You didn't. Why didn't you fight harder? Dad asked. Why didn't you make us listen? I tried. But you'd already made up your minds. And honestly, after a while, I realized that if you could believe I'd say something that cruel to Emma, if you could cut me off that easily, then maybe you didn't really know me at all. Mom was crying again, big heaving sobs. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. How can you ever forgive us? I sat down next to her. 5 years ago, this moment would have been everything I wanted. My parents apologizing, admitting they were wrong, wanting me back in their lives. But now, sitting in this hospital waiting room at 4 a.m., I felt nothing but exhaustion. I don't know if I can, I said honestly. Not right now. Maybe not ever. But Emma needs us right now, all of us. So let's just focus on that. You're right, Dad said. But Sarah, when this is all over, when Emma is better, we need to talk. Really talk. We need to try to fix this. Maybe, I said. We'll see. The sun was rising when Emma woke up again, more coherent this time. I was alone in her room, having sent my parents to get breakfast in the cafeteria. Sarah, she said, her voice stronger now. You're really here. I'm really here. I'm sorry. For everything. I know saying it doesn't make it better, but I need you to know. I was jealous of you. You were always so perfect, so successful, so put together. I felt like I could never measure up. And that Christmas, I overheard Mom telling Aunt Rachel how proud she was of you, how you were doing so well at your job, and I snapped. I wanted to be the one she was proud of for once. I wanted to be the golden child. So you made up a lie that destroyed my relationship with our parents. I know. I know how awful that is. I've regretted it every single day for the past 5 years. I wanted to take it back so many times, but I didn't know how. I dug myself in too deep. You could have just told the truth, Emma. At any point in the last 5 years, you could have told them the truth. I was scared. Scared they'd hate me. Scared I'd lose them. So instead, I lost them. I know. And I hate myself for it. I've been in therapy for 2 years now, working through my issues, trying to figure out why I did it. My therapist says I have a pattern of self-destructive behavior and that I sabotage the people who love me because deep down, I don't think I deserve their love. That's not an excuse. I know it's not. I'm not trying to excuse what I did. I'm just trying to explain it. And I'm trying to say that I'm sorry, and I want to make it right, if that's even possible. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. She was 25 now, not the 20-year-old college student she'd been when this all started. She looked older, more tired, but also somehow more genuine than I'd ever seen her. I don't know if you can make it right, I said. But I appreciate the apology. And I hope you mean it. I do. I swear I do. Mom and Dad came back then, and Emma told them the whole story. The jealousy, the lie, the 5 years of guilt. She cried, they cried, everyone cried. It was messy and painful and long overdue. We owe you such an apology, Sarah, Mom said. We should have believed you. We should have given you the benefit of the doubt. We were terrible parents. You weren't terrible parents, I said. You wanted to protect Emma. I get that. But you should have protected me too. You're right, Dad said. And we're going to spend the rest of our lives making it up to you, if you'll let us. Part 8. Rebuilding. Emma spent 2 weeks in the hospital. I visited every day, sometimes with my parents, sometimes alone. We talked, really talked, about everything that had happened, everything we'd missed in each other's lives over the past 5 years. I told her about my job, my degree, the crisis hotline, my failed relationships. She told me about her job at the marketing firm, the anxiety that plagued her, the therapy she'd finally started after a panic attack left her unable to leave her apartment for 3 days. I'm proud of you, I told her one afternoon. For going to therapy, for working on yourself. I should have done it years ago. Maybe if I had, none of this would have happened. Maybe. But we can't change the past. We can only move forward. Do you think you can forgive me? Eventually? I thought about it for a long moment. I think so. But it's going to take time. A lot of time. Trust isn't something you can rebuild overnight. I know. I'll wait as long as it takes. My relationship with my parents was more complicated. They wanted to jump right back into being a family, wanted to pretend the last 5 years hadn't happened. But I couldn't do that. Too much had changed. I'd changed. I need space, I told them after Emma was released from the hospital and moved back into Mom and Dad's house to recover. I need time to process all of this. How much time? Mom asked, her voice small and scared. I don't know. Months, maybe. Maybe longer. But I'm not disappearing. I'll stay in touch. We'll text, talk on the phone. We just can't jump back to the way things were. The way things were is gone, Dad said. We understand that. But we're willing to do whatever it takes to build something new with you. I started seeing them once a month for dinner, neutral territory at a restaurant in the city. We'd talk about safe topics, work, current events, books we were reading. Slowly, carefully, we started building a new relationship. It wasn't the same as before. It would never be the same. But it was something. Emma and I texted regularly. She sent me updates on her physical therapy, pictures of Mom's cooking, memes that made her think of me. I sent her book recommendations, stories from work, pictures of marmalade. It was tentative, fragile, but it was real. 6 months after the accident, Emma invited me to her apartment for dinner. She'd moved out of mom and dad's place and into a small studio in Queens. She cooked pasta, terrible pasta, honestly, she'd never been a good cook, and we sat on her tiny balcony drinking wine and watching the sunset. I'm starting a new job, she told me. At a nonprofit. I'm going to be doing social media marketing for an organization that helps young women with mental health issues. That's amazing, Em. You inspired me. The work you do, helping people. I wanted to do something that mattered too. I'm proud of you. She smiled, tears in her eyes. That means everything to me. More than you know. A year after the accident, we had Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house. The whole family was there, Mom, Dad, Emma, Aunt Rachel, and me. It was awkward at first, all of us trying too hard to be normal, but by the end of the night, we were laughing and telling stories and it almost felt like old times. Almost, but not quite. There was a before and an after now, and we were living in the after. I'm grateful for second chances, Mom said when we went around the table sharing what we were thankful for. I'm grateful that we're all here together, and that we're trying to heal. I'm grateful for forgiveness, Emma said, looking at me. Even when it's hard, even when it's not fully there yet, I'm grateful for the possibility of it. When it was my turn, I said, I'm grateful for the person I've become. The past 5 years were the hardest of my life, but they made me stronger. They taught me who I am when everything is stripped away. And I'm grateful for the family I've built, the friends who stood by me, the people who believed in me when my own family didn't. And I'm grateful that we're all here, trying to move forward. Part 9. Moving forward. It's been 2 years since the accident now. Emma is fully recovered physically, though she still sees her therapist weekly. She's thriving at her job, has a new boyfriend who seems kind and stable, and is planning to go back to school for a degree in counseling. My relationship with my parents is better, though it will never be what it was. We see each other regularly now, have holidays together, talk on the phone. But there's a guardedness in me that wasn't there before, a little voice that reminds me that they chose to believe a lie over believing me. I'm working on letting that voice go, but it's a process. Emma and I are close again, or as close as we can be given everything that's happened. We meet for brunch every Sunday, text throughout the week, support each other through the ups and downs of life. Last month, she asked me to be her maid of honor when she gets married. I said yes. I've started dating again too. His name is James, and he's a teacher at one of the schools our nonprofit partners with. He knows the whole story, knows about the 5 years of estrangement and the complicated reconciliation. He doesn't judge me for my complicated feelings about my family. Family is messy, he told me on our 3rd date. Anyone who says otherwise is lying. The important thing is that you're all trying. That counts for something. I think about that day in the emergency room a lot, the day I had to decide whether to help the sister who destroyed my life. I'm glad I made the choice I did. Not because it led to reconciliation, though I'm grateful for that too, but because it proved to me that I'm the kind of person who does the right thing even when it's hard, even when it hurts. I've learned that forgiveness isn't a one-time thing. It's a choice you make every day. Some days, it's easy. Some days, I'm angry all over again about the 5 years I lost, the pain I endured, the family gatherings I missed. But I'm learning to sit with those feelings, to acknowledge them without letting them consume me. Emma is learning too. She's learning to deal with her jealousy and insecurity in healthier ways, to communicate instead of sabotage, to take responsibility for her actions. She slips up sometimes, we all do, but she's trying, and that's what matters. Last week, Mom pulled me aside after Sunday dinner. I want you to know something, she said. I think about what we did to you every single day. The guilt is overwhelming sometimes. I failed you as a mother, and I'm so sorry. I know you are, Mom. Do you think you'll ever be able to fully forgive us? I thought about it, really thought about it. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe. But maybe forgiveness isn't the point. Maybe the point is that we're all here, we're all trying, and we're all doing our best to move forward together. I can live with that, she said. As long as you're in my life, I can live with that. Epilogue. It's a Sunday afternoon in late spring, and I'm sitting in Prospect Park with marmalade in a carrier, reading a book and enjoying the sunshine. My phone buzzes with a text from Emma. Just got engaged. Call me. I call her immediately, and she tells me the whole story, how her boyfriend proposed, where they're thinking of having the wedding, how excited she is. I'm genuinely happy for her. Will you help me plan it? She asks. I know it's a lot to ask, but you're so much better at organizing things than I am. Of course I'll help you. And Sarah? Thank you. For everything. For showing up at the hospital that night. For giving me another chance. For being my sister even when I didn't deserve it. You're welcome, I say. I love you, Em. I love you too. I hang up and sit back on my blanket, watching families play frisbee, couples walk their dogs, people just living their lives. I think about the person I was 5 years ago, before Emma's lie, before the estrangement. That person was more naive, more trusting, less scarred. But she was also less strong, less self-aware, less sure of who she was. I wouldn't wish the pain of the last 5 years on anyone, but I also wouldn't trade the person I've become. I know now what I'm capable of, know that I can survive the worst betrayal and come out the other side still standing. I know that I'm the kind of person who shows up, who does the right thing, who chooses compassion even when it's hard. My phone buzzes again. This time it's James. Dinner tonight? I found a new Thai place in the village I think you'll love. I text back. Sounds perfect. Pick me up at 7? It's a date. I close my eyes and tilt my face toward the sun. My life isn't perfect. My family situation is still complicated, probably always will be. But I'm happy. I have work I'm passionate about, people who love me, a future that looks bright. 5 years ago, my parents cut me off over my sister's lie. It was the worst thing that ever happened to me. But 5 years later, I was her only hope in the earth, and that moment of choice, the choice to show up, to help, to forgive, changed everything. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. And sometimes, broken families can heal. Not completely. Not perfectly. But enough. Just enough. And for now, that's everything. I was sitting in Dr. Patterson's office at NYU Langone Medical Center in Manhattan when she told me I had cancer. Stage 3 breast cancer, to be exact. I was 28 years old, sitting in a sterile examination room with motivational posters about early detection on the walls, and a doctor I'd only met twice before was telling me that my body was trying to kill me. I'm so sorry, Rachel, Dr. Patterson said, her voice gentle but professional. She was in her 50s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and I could tell she'd delivered this news before. Too many times before. The biopsy results came back positive. The tumor is approximately 4 centimeters, and we found cancer cells in 2 of your lymph nodes. That puts you at stage 3. The words washed over me like cold water. Stage 3. Cancer. At 28. What does that mean? I asked, my voice sounding strange and distant to my own ears. What happens now? It means we need to start treatment immediately. You're looking at chemotherapy first, to shrink the tumor, followed by surgery, likely a mastectomy, and then radiation. The good news is that you're young and otherwise healthy, and stage 3 breast cancer has a good survival rate with aggressive treatment. We're looking at about a 70% 5-year survival rate. 70%. which meant a 30% chance I'd be dead before I turned 35. How long? I managed to ask. How long is the treatment? The chemo will be about 6 months, possibly longer depending on how you respond. Then surgery, recovery from that, and radiation for another 6 to 8 weeks. You're looking at about a year of treatment, minimum. A year. A year of my life, fighting a disease I didn't even know I had until 2 weeks ago when I found the lump during a routine self-exam in my shower. Dr. Patterson went through the details, the type of chemotherapy drugs they'd use, the side effects I should expect, the importance of having a support system, the need to start immediately. I nodded and took the pamphlets she handed me, but I wasn't really processing any of it. I was 28 years old. I had a marketing job I loved at a tech startup in Tribeca. I had an apartment in Williamsburg that I shared with my best friend. I had plans, travel plans, career plans, maybe someday get married and have kids plans. And now I had cancer. I left the hospital in a daze, walking out into the bright October afternoon in Kips Bay. The city moved around me like it always did, people rushing to meetings, tourists taking photos, delivery guys weaving through traffic on bikes. The world kept turning, completely unaware that mine had just stopped. I made it 2 blocks before I had to sit down on a bench near Madison Square Park. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. But I needed to call someone. I needed to hear a familiar voice, needed someone to tell me it was going to be okay. I called my parents. My mother and father, Linda and Robert Chen, lived in Westchester County, about 40 minutes north of the city. I'd grown up there, in a beautiful colonial house with a big backyard, the youngest of 2 daughters. My older sister, Jennifer, was 32 and still lived at home while she planned her upcoming wedding to her fiancé, Brad. The wedding. That's all my family had talked about for the past 6 months. Jennifer's perfect wedding to her perfect fiancé, planned for next spring at some vineyard in the Hudson Valley. My mother was obsessed with it, the flowers, the dress, the guest list, the seating arrangements. Every family dinner, every phone call, every conversation somehow circled back to Jennifer's wedding. My father answered on the 3rd ring. Rachel? Is everything okay? You don't usually call in the middle of the day. Dad, I said, and my voice broke. Dad, I just came from the doctor. The biopsy results came back. I have cancer. There was a pause. A long pause. I could hear the television in the background. My father was probably in his home office, working remotely like he did most days. Cancer? He repeated, like he wasn't sure he'd heard correctly. What kind of cancer? Breast cancer. Stage 3. They want to start chemotherapy right away, and then surgery, and radiation. Dad, I'm really scared. Another pause. Then. Rachel, This is a lot to process. Can you hold on a second? I heard muffled voices, my father calling for my mother. More muffled conversation. Then my mother's voice came on the line, tight and strained. Rachel, your father just told me. Honey, this is terrible timing. Terrible timing. Those were the words my mother chose. Not I'm so sorry or we'll get through this together or we love you. Terrible timing. Mom, I have cancer. I don't think there's ever good timing for that. I know, but sweetheart, Jennifer's wedding is in 6 months. We're right in the middle of planning. Your sister is so stressed already, and if we tell her about this, it's going to completely derail everything. You know how sensitive she is. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom, I have stage 3 cancer. I need to start chemotherapy. I'm going to need help, support, and we want to help you, of course we do, my mother interrupted. But Rachel, you have to understand our position. Jennifer has been planning this wedding for a year. We've already put down deposits, sent save the dates. If we start focusing on your situation, it's going to take attention away from Jennifer's special day. Can't this wait until after the wedding? Wait, I repeated, my voice rising. People on the bench next to me glanced over, and I lowered my voice to a harsh whisper. Mom, cancer doesn't wait. The doctor said we need to start treatment immediately. This isn't something I can just postpone. Don't be dramatic, Rachel. I'm sure a few months won't make that much difference. You're young and healthy. And frankly, you've always been the strong one. Jennifer needs us right now. She's falling apart over wedding stress. You can handle this on your own for a little while. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Are you seriously telling me that Jennifer's wedding is more important than me having cancer? My father's voice came back on the line. He must have taken the phone from my mother. Rachel, honey, listen. We're not saying your health isn't important. But you have to understand, we can't deal with this right now. Your sister is planning her wedding. It's the biggest day of her life. If we suddenly shift all our attention to you and your medical issues, it's going to ruin everything for her. Can you handle this quietly? Get the treatment you need, but don't make a big production out of it. And please don't tell Jennifer. The stress would be too much for her right now. I was crying now, sitting on a bench in Madison Square Park, tears streaming down my face while strangers walked by pretending not to notice. Dad, I'm terrified. I need my family. I need help. You're a smart, capable woman, Rachel. You've always been independent. We have faith that you can handle this. Now, I have to go. Your mother and I are meeting with the wedding planner this afternoon to finalize the table settings. We'll talk later, okay? And then he hung up. My father, the man who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my math homework and walked me to the bus stop on my first day of school, he hung up on me. Left me sitting on a park bench, alone, with a cancer diagnosis and no support. I sat there for a long time, phone in my hand, trying to process what had just happened. My parents, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, had just told me that my sister's wedding was more important than my cancer. That I should handle it quietly. That I was on my own. My name is Rachel Chen, and that phone call was the day I lost my family. Not physically, they were still alive, still living their lives in Westchester. But emotionally, spiritually, the family I'd grown up believing in just ceased to exist. And I had to face the fight of my life completely alone. I eventually pulled myself together enough to get on the subway and head back to my apartment in Williamsburg. My roommate, Sarah Martinez, was home when I arrived, working remotely from our small kitchen table. She took one look at my face and immediately closed her laptop. Rach? What happened? I told her everything. The diagnosis, the treatment plan, the phone call with my parents. Sarah, who I'd known since college, who'd been my roommate for 3 years, listened without interrupting. And when I finished, she pulled me into a hug and let me cry on her shoulder. Okay, she said when I finally stopped sobbing. Okay. So your parents are being completely awful. But you're not alone, Rach. You have me. You have your friends. We're going to get through this together. I don't want to be a burden. Stop. You're not a burden. You're my best friend, and you have cancer, and I'm going to help you fight it. End of discussion. Sarah became my rock over the months that followed. She went with me to my first oncology appointment at Memorial Sloan Kettering, where I met Dr. Morrison, the oncologist who would oversee my treatment. Dr. Morrison was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, with an energetic demeanor that somehow made the terrifying diagnosis feel slightly more manageable. Stage 3 is serious, but it's not a death sentence, she told me during that first appointment. The treatment is going to be rough, I won't sugarcoat that. But you're young, you're healthy otherwise, and we've caught it before it metastasized to other organs. We're going to hit this hard and fast with chemotherapy, shrink that tumor, get it out of you, and make sure it doesn't come back. The chemotherapy started 2 weeks later, on a gray Tuesday morning in late October. I remember every detail of that first infusion, how I took the subway to Memorial Sloan Kettering on the Upper East Side, how my hands shook as I checked in at the reception desk, how the infusion center felt both clinical and oddly peaceful. Sarah came with me, of course. She'd rearranged her entire work schedule to be there, bringing a bag full of books, magazines, snacks, and a soft blanket from home. The infusion center was a large room filled with reclining chairs, each one occupied by a patient receiving treatment. Some were reading, some were sleeping, some were talking quietly with family members. All of us were there for the same reason: poison in our veins, hope in our hearts. The nurse who started my 4 was named Patricia, a warm woman in her 50s who'd been working in oncology for 20 years. She explained everything she was doing as she worked, her voice calm and reassuring. This first treatment is usually the hardest emotionally, she told me as she inserted the 4-line. You're going to feel a lot of different things: scared, angry, sad, maybe even weirdly optimistic. All of that is normal. Let yourself feel it. The drugs went in slowly, dripping from the bags hanging on a pole beside my chair. Adriamycin and cyclophosphamide, I'd memorized the names, though I couldn't pronounce them properly. Red Devil, some people called the adriamycin, because of its bright red color and brutal side effects. How long will this take? I asked Patricia. About 2 hours for this first infusion. Then you'll come back every 2 weeks for this combination, and after 4 cycles, we'll switch to a different drug protocol. Your whole chemo course will be about 6 months, give or take. 6 months. Half a year of my life, sitting in this chair or recovering from sitting in this chair. Sarah held my hand while the drugs dripped in. We didn't talk much. What was there to say? Instead, we just sat together, her presence a reminder that I wasn't completely alone even though my family had abandoned me. The side effects started that same evening. I made it home feeling okay, even optimistic. Maybe I'd be one of the lucky ones who didn't get too sick. Maybe the horror stories I'd read online were exaggerations. Then, around 8 p.m., the nausea hit like a freight train. I barely made it to the bathroom before I started throwing up, violent waves of nausea that left me shaking and weak. Sarah held my hair back, what was left of it at that point, and rubbed my back, murmuring words of comfort. I'm sorry, I kept saying between bouts of vomiting. I'm so sorry. Stop apologizing. You have nothing to be sorry for. The nausea lasted for 3 days straight. I couldn't eat, could barely keep water down. The anti-nausea medications the doctors had prescribed helped a little, but not enough. I lost 6 pounds in those first 3 days, weight I couldn't afford to lose. Then came the fatigue. Not normal tiredness, this was something else entirely. A bone-deep exhaustion that made even the simplest tasks feel impossible. Walking to the bathroom left me breathless. Showering required planning and rest periods. I spent most of my days on the couch, sleeping fitfully or staring at the TV without really watching it. My friends helped in shifts. Maya would come over after work, bringing soup or smoothies and sitting with me while I tried to eat. James brought books and audiobooks, understanding that I often couldn't focus well enough to read but could listen. Lisa organized a cleaning schedule, making sure our apartment stayed livable when both Sarah and I were too exhausted to handle it. These people, most of whom I'd known for less time than I'd known my family, became my lifeline. They showed up without being asked. They anticipated needs I didn't know I had. They loved me through the worst of it. Meanwhile, my phone remained silent. No calls from my parents checking on me. No texts from Jennifer asking how I was doing. Nothing. Well, that's not entirely true. My mother did call once, about 3 weeks into my treatment, to tell me that Jennifer had found the perfect venue and they'd put down a deposit. It's this beautiful vineyard in the Hudson Valley, she gushed, apparently oblivious to my weak, raspy voice. The ceremony will be outdoors overlooking the vineyard, and the reception in this gorgeous barn they've renovated. It's going to be absolutely perfect. That's nice, Mom, I managed to say. We're so excited. The wedding is going to be in late May, just perfect timing for spring flowers. Jennifer is already starting to look at dresses. Oh, Rachel, I know she'd love your input on dresses. You've always had such good taste. Maybe you could come to the bridal shop with us next weekend? I was lying on my couch, wearing the same sweatpants I'd had on for 3 days, a scarf covering my thinning hair, still nauseated from my last chemo treatment. The idea of spending a day in a bridal shop watching Jennifer try on white dresses while I felt like death was almost funny in its absurdity. I can't, Mom. I'm not feeling well. Oh, you're probably just working too hard. You know you tend to burn yourself out. Try to take some time off, relax a little. Anyway, I have to run, I have a meeting with the wedding planner. Love you, sweetie. She hung up before I could respond. Before I could tell her that I wasn't working at all because I was on medical leave. Before I could remind her that I had cancer. Before I could ask why she didn't care. I didn't cry after that call. I'd cried so much in the early weeks after my diagnosis that I didn't have tears left for this particular hurt. Instead, I felt something settling inside me, a cold, hard understanding that my parents were never going to be the people I needed them to be. That I was truly on my own. The hair loss started about 2 weeks after my first infusion. I'd been prepared for it intellectually, Dr. Morrison had warned me it would happen, had given me resources about wigs and head coverings. But nothing could have prepared me for the emotional reality of it. It started with strands on my pillow one morning. Then more in the shower, clumps of my long black hair swirling down the drain. Within a few days, I couldn't run my hands through my hair without coming away with handfuls of it. It was everywhere, on my pillow, on my clothes, on the bathroom floor. My thick, beautiful hair that I'd always been a little vain about was falling out in chunks. I called Sarah at work, crying. It's happening. My hair is falling out. She came home early, finding me in the bathroom, staring at the hair accumulated in the sink. She didn't say anything, just pulled me into a hug and let me cry. Want me to help you shave it? She asked when I finally stopped sobbing. Might be easier than watching it fall out in chunks. So that evening, Sarah buzzed my head with clippers we'd bought from a drugstore on Bedford Avenue. We did it in our bathroom, me sitting on a stool while she carefully shaved away what was left of my hair. I cried through the whole thing, mourning this visible sign of my illness, this thing that would make my cancer obvious to everyone who saw me. When she was done, I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger, gaunt, pale, bald. I looked sick. I looked like a cancer patient. There was no hiding it anymore. You're still beautiful, Sarah said fiercely, standing behind me, meeting my eyes in the mirror. You're still you. This is just temporary, Ratch. Your hair will grow back. What if it doesn't? What if I die before it grows back? You're not going to die. You're going to beat this cancer, and your hair is going to grow back, and someday you're going to look back on this moment and be proud of how strong you were. I wanted to believe her. But mostly, I just felt scared and alone. The next day, Sarah took me wig shopping. We went to a boutique in Soho that specialized in wigs for medical hair loss. The owner, a woman named Denise who was a cancer survivor herself, was kind and patient as I tried on different styles. Some women embrace being bald, Denise told me as she adjusted a shoulder-length brown wig on my head. They rock the bald look or wear colorful scarves. Others feel more comfortable with a wig that looks close to their natural hair. There's no right or wrong way to do this. It's about what makes you feel most like yourself. I ended up buying 2 wigs, one that looked similar to my natural hair, and one that was completely different, a short pixie cut I'd never had the courage to try before. I also bought a collection of soft caps and scarves for when I was at home and didn't want to bother with a wig. See? Sarah said as we left the shop, shopping bags in hand. Options. You've got this. But I didn't feel like I had it. I felt like I was drowning, and everyone around me was either throwing me life preservers, my friends, or watching from the shore and wondering why I was making such a fuss about a little water, my family. The chemotherapy regimen continued every 2 weeks, like clockwork. Each infusion followed by several days of brutal nausea and fatigue, then a few days of feeling almost normal, then back to the infusion center. It became a rhythm I hated but couldn't escape. During the 3rd cycle, I ended up in the emergency room at New York Presbyterian. I'd been vomiting for 2 days straight, unable to keep down even water. I was dangerously dehydrated, and Sarah finally called 911 when I became too weak to stand. The ER was busy that night, full of the usual chaos of a New York City emergency department. I was given 4 fluids and stronger anti-nausea medication, and eventually, I felt well enough to go home. But the experience shook me. This treatment that was supposed to save my life was destroying my body, and I was doing it all without the support of my parents. I didn't call them to tell them about the ER visit. What would have been the point? They'd made it clear that my health crisis wasn't a priority. Jennifer's wedding was what mattered. In December, I hit my lowest point. It was 3 months into treatment, right in the middle of the chemo protocol, and the cumulative effects were devastating. I was weak, nauseated, exhausted. My blood counts were dangerously low, putting me at risk for infection. I had painful mouth sores that made eating nearly impossible. My skin was dry and sensitive. My nails were brittle and discolored. I looked in the mirror one morning and didn't recognize myself. The woman staring back was sick in a way that went beyond the physical. She looked defeated. Broken. Sarah found me crying in the bathroom that morning. "Rach? What's wrong?" "I can't do this anymore," I said. "I can't keep going through this. It's too hard. I'm too tired." She sat down on the bathroom floor beside me, pulling me close. "Yes, you can. You're the strongest person I know." "I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm dying." "You're not dying. You're fighting. And yeah, the fight is brutal and exhausting and horrible. But you're doing it. Every day you get up, every treatment you get through, every side effect you survive, that's you winning. One day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time. You're winning, Rach." I spent that Christmas in bed, too sick from my most recent chemo infusion to do anything else. Sarah's family invited me to celebrate with them in New Jersey, but I couldn't handle the trip. Instead, Sarah stayed home with me, and we watched movies and ate takeout Chinese food, one of the few things I could stomach, and pretended everything was okay. My mother called on Christmas Eve with updates about Jennifer's wedding planning. The invitations had been ordered. The menu had been finalized. Jennifer had found her dress, a stunning Vera Wang that cost more than my entire cancer treatment deductible. "I wish you could have been there when she tried it on," my mother said wistfully. "She looked like a princess." "I'm glad she found something she loves," I said, my voice flat. "Are you okay, Rachel? You sound tired." For a moment, I considered telling her the truth. About the chemo, the exhaustion, the dehydration, the fear. About how I'd spent the past 4 months fighting for my life while she planned centerpieces and seating charts. But what would have been the point? She'd made her choice. They all had. "I'm fine, Mom. Just tired from work." "Well, make sure you're taking care of yourself. Anyway, I should go. We're having Christmas dinner with Brad's family tonight, and I still need to finish wrapping presents. Love you." After she hung up, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about what it meant to be taking care of myself. I was doing it, wasn't I? I was showing up to every treatment, taking all my medications, trying to eat even when I felt too sick, resting when my body needed it. I was taking care of myself because no one else was going to do it for me. That realization should have made me sad. Instead, it made me angry. And that anger, surprisingly, gave me strength. My friend stepped up in ways that still make me emotional to remember. Sarah, of course, was there for everything, driving me to appointments, staying with me during the worst days, cooking when I could eat, cleaning when I couldn't. But others helped too. My college friend Maya organized a meal train, getting people to drop off food several times a week. My coworker James visited me regularly, bringing books and magazines and just sitting with me when I was too tired to talk. My friend Lisa from my book club started a GoFundMe to help with medical expenses, raising over $15,000 from friends, acquaintances, and even strangers who read my story. These people, most of whom had known me far less time than my family had, became my family. They were the ones who showed up. Who cared? Who made it possible for me to survive not just physically, but emotionally. Meanwhile, my actual family was busy with wedding planning. I knew this because my mother would occasionally call with updates, cheerfully talking about flower arrangements and band selections, never once asking how I was feeling or how treatment was going. It was like my cancer diagnosis had never happened. Like I'd never made that phone call from Madison Square Park. On Thanksgiving, my mother called to invite me to dinner in Westchester. "We'd love to have you, Rachel. Jennifer and Brad will be there, of course, and Brad's parents. It would mean so much to your sister if you came." I'd just had a chemo infusion 2 days before. I was weak, nauseated, and barely able to keep down water, let alone a full Thanksgiving meal. But more than that, I was angry. "Will anyone at this dinner know I have cancer?" I asked. There was a pause. "Rachel, we discussed this. We don't want to stress Jennifer out. So that's a no. Please don't be difficult about this. Can't you just come and be supportive of your sister? She's been working so hard on the wedding planning." "I have cancer, Mom. Stage 3 breast cancer. I'm in the middle of chemotherapy. I'm losing my hair, I can barely eat, I'm exhausted all the time. And you want me to come to Thanksgiving dinner and pretend everything is fine so I don't stress out Jennifer? You've always been so selfish, Rachel. This is exactly why we didn't want to tell Jennifer about your situation. You make everything about you." I hung up on her. I actually hung up on my own mother. And then I spent Thanksgiving with Sarah's family in New Jersey, with people who barely knew me but treated me with more love and compassion than my own parents had shown. The chemotherapy lasted 6 months, just as Dr. Morrison had predicted. 6 months of hell, of nausea and fatigue and pain, of watching my body deteriorate, of wondering if I was going to survive. But I did survive. The chemo worked. The tumor shrank from 4 centimeters to less than 1 centimeter. In March, I had a mastectomy, and the surgeon was able to remove the remaining cancer tissue along with several lymph nodes. The surgery was brutal. I woke up with drains coming out of my chest, bandages everywhere, pain that made me catch my breath. But Sarah was there when I came out of anesthesia, holding my hand and telling me I'd done great. My parents didn't visit me in the hospital. They didn't call. They didn't send flowers or a card. Because Jennifer's wedding was 2 months away, and they were busy with final preparations. After the surgery, I had 8 weeks of radiation therapy. Every weekday, I'd take the subway to Sloan Kettering and lie on a table while machines targeted the site of the tumor with radiation. It made me exhausted in a different way than the chemo had, a bone-deep tiredness that never quite went away. But I kept going. One day at a time. In May, exactly 1 year after my diagnosis, Dr. Morrison gave me the news I'd been waiting for. I was cancer-free. The scans were clear, the blood work was normal, the cancer was gone. I'd made it. I cried in her office, overwhelmed with relief and exhaustion and joy and grief for everything I'd lost along the way, my health, my hair, my sense of invincibility, my relationship with my family. You did it, Rachel, Dr. Morrison said, smiling. You fought hard, and you won. I'm so proud of you. I wanted to call my parents and tell them. For a brief moment, sitting in that office, I wanted to share this victory with them. But then I remembered. They didn't know I'd been fighting. They'd made it clear they didn't want to know. So I called Sarah instead, and she screamed with joy so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Jennifer's wedding was the following weekend. A beautiful Saturday in late May at a vineyard in the Hudson Valley. I didn't go. I wasn't invited, actually, or rather, I'd received an invitation 8 months earlier, back when I was still speaking to my family, but I'd never asked, and no one had followed up. The day of the wedding, I went to Prospect Park in Brooklyn with Sarah and some other friends. We had a picnic, drank champagne, my first alcohol since starting treatment, and celebrated my survival. Someone had made a cake that said "Fuck Cancer" in pink frosting. It was perfect. I saw photos of the wedding later on Facebook. Jennifer looked beautiful in her white dress, my parents beaming beside her. The vineyard was gorgeous, the decorations elegant, everything picture perfect. No one looking at those photos would have any idea that while this perfect wedding was happening, the bride's younger sister was recovering from cancer treatment that she'd gone through entirely alone. Life slowly returned to a new normal over the following months. In June, about a month after getting my cancer-free diagnosis, I started the process of going back to work. Not to my old marketing job, I'd lost that position during my medical leave, despite what should have been protections. Instead, I found a new position at a healthcare nonprofit called HealthBridge, an organization focused on improving access to cancer care for underserved communities. The job interview was unusual. The hiring manager, a woman named Diana Santos, looked at my resume and immediately noticed the gap. Can I ask about this 10-month gap in your employment? I'd prepared for this question, but it still made my stomach twist. I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. I took medical leave for treatment and recovery. Diana's expression shifted immediately from professional to compassionate. I'm so sorry. How are you doing now? Cancer-free as of last month. Still recovering, still dealing with some fatigue and other side effects, but my oncologist has cleared me to return to work. That must have been incredibly difficult, Diana said. Did you have good support through it? Family, friends? The question caught me off guard. I had great friends. My roommate was amazing. But my family. I trailed off, unsure how much to share in a job interview. Diana waited, her expression patient and kind. My family wasn't there for me, I said finally. They had other priorities. So I went through treatment mostly alone, with help from friends. Something flickered across Diana's face, recognition, maybe, or empathy. I'm a survivor myself, she said quietly. Ovarian cancer, 6 years ago. And I know exactly what you mean about finding out who your people really are when you're going through treatment. The people who show up, and the people who disappear. We talked for another hour, and by the end, Diana offered me the job. It paid less than my previous position, but the work felt meaningful in a way my old marketing job never had. I'd be helping connect cancer patients with resources, support, and treatment options. I'd be doing work that might have helped me during my own journey. I started in July, and threw myself into the work with an intensity that surprised even me. Every patient I helped, every resource I connected people with, every barrier I helped someone overcome felt personal. I understood their fear, their exhaustion, their desperation. I'd lived it. My hair was growing back by then, though it came in completely different from before, curly instead of straight, with a texture I didn't recognize. I kept it short, partly because I kind of liked the pixie cut look, partly because I wasn't ready to deal with longer hair yet. Physical therapy helped me regain strength in my right arm and shoulder, which had been weakened by the lymph node removal during my mastectomy. The sessions were painful and frustrating, but I was determined to get back as much function as possible. I also started going to a support group for young adult cancer survivors. The group met every other Thursday evening in a community room at a church in the West Village. There were about 15 of us, ranging in age from early 20s to late 30s, all dealing with the aftermath of cancer. That's where I met people who really understood what I was going through. Not just the physical recovery, but the emotional landmines. The fear that every ache or pain meant the cancer was back. The complicated relationship with our bodies that had betrayed us. The grief for the lives we'd planned that had been derailed. The anger at people who disappointed us. My husband left me 2 months into chemo, one woman, Kelly, shared during one meeting. Said he couldn't handle it. Meanwhile, my neighbor, this woman I barely knew, drove me to every single appointment for 8 months. My brother told me I was being dramatic when I asked for help, another member, Marcus, said. He said everyone gets sick sometimes, and I just needed to tough it out. This was for stage 4 lymphoma. But my college roommate, who I hadn't talked to in 5 years, flew in from California to stay with me for a week after my surgery. Everyone had a version of the same story. People who should have been there weren't. People you barely knew became your lifeline. Cancer didn't just reveal the disease in your body, it revealed the truth about your relationships. I shared my own story with the group eventually. About my parents choosing Jennifer's wedding over my cancer, about going through treatment alone, about the phone calls where my mother updated me on floral arrangements while never asking how I was feeling. What did you do? Someone asked. Did you ever confront them? Not yet, I said. Honestly, I don't know if I ever will. Part of me wants to. Part of me wants to tell them exactly how much they hurt me, how devastating it was to be abandoned when I needed them most. But another part of me thinks, what's the point? They've shown me who they are. Confronting them won't change that. Maybe it's not about changing them, Kelly suggested. Maybe it's about you getting closure. Saying what you need to say so you can move on. I thought about that a lot over the following months. About what I would say to my parents if I had the chance, if I found the courage. But the months passed, and I never made the call. Instead, I focused on building a life I was proud of. I got better at my job, eventually getting promoted to senior care coordinator. I moved to a new apartment in Park Slope, a sunny one-bedroom that was all mine. I adopted a cat from a shelter, a orange tabby I named Phoenix because we'd both risen from the ashes. I started dating again, tentatively. There was a guy named Michael I met at a coffee shop in Brooklyn. We went out a few times, and on the 3rd date, I told him about the cancer. He handled it well, or so I thought. But a few weeks later, he ended things, saying he wasn't ready for something so serious. Code 4. Your medical history scares me. Then there was David, who I met through a friend. He seemed great until he made a comment about my short hair. Are you going to grow it out? I usually prefer women with longer hair. When I told him it was short because I'd lost it during chemo, he backtracked awkwardly, but the damage was done. Dating is the worst, I complained to Sarah one evening over wine. Everyone either treats me like I'm broken or like I'm too complicated. You're not broken or complicated, Sarah said firmly. You're a survivor. And the right person will see that as the strength it is, not a liability. She was right, as usual. I eventually met someone, Jake, a teacher I met through mutual friends. When I told him about the cancer on our 4th date, he just nodded and said, "That must have been really hard. Thank you for trusting me enough to share that." We dated for about 8 months. It was good, comfortable, easy, affectionate. But ultimately, we wanted different things. He wanted to move to Portland for a job opportunity. I wanted to stay in New York, where I'd built my support system and my career. We ended things amicably, staying friends. Through it all, the new job, the new apartment, the dating, the therapy, the support group, I was rebuilding. Creating a life that was authentically mine, not shaped by my parents' expectations or my sister's timeline or anyone else's priorities. A life built on the foundation of people who'd proven they cared. 2 years passed. 2 years of clean scans and normal blood work. 2 years of cautious hope that maybe, just maybe, I was going to be okay. 2 years of healing, both physically and emotionally. I celebrated my second cancerversary, the anniversary of my cancer-free diagnosis, with a party in Prospect Park. Sarah organized it, inviting all the people who'd helped me through treatment and recovery. We had a picnic, played games, drank champagne. Someone had made a cake that said "Still here" in purple frosting. Speech. Someone called out, and suddenly everyone was looking at me expectantly. I stood up, looking around at all these faces: Sarah, Maya, James, Lisa, people from my support group, co-workers from HealthBridge, my therapist Dr. Rodriguez who'd come as a friend. My chosen family. 2 years ago, I was told I had a 70% chance of surviving 5 years. Which meant a 30% chance I'd be dead before I turned 35. Those odds were terrifying. But what was even more terrifying was realizing I'd have to face them alone, without my family. I paused, gathering my thoughts. I called my parents when I was diagnosed, crying and scared. And they told me they couldn't deal with it because my sister was planning her wedding. That phone call was one of the lowest moments of my life. But it was also, in a strange way, a gift. Because it showed me who I could count on, and it wasn't the people I'd expected. I looked around at the group. You all showed up. Some of you barely knew me, but you showed up. You drove me to appointments, you brought me food, you sat with me when I was too sick to do anything but exist. You donated money, you sent cards, you texted just to check in. You became my family, the family I chose, the family I needed. My voice cracked a little. So today, on my second cancerversary, I want to say thank you. Thank you for saving my life, not just physically but emotionally. Thank you for showing me what real love looks like. Thank you for being my people. There wasn't a dry eye in the group. Sarah pulled me into a hug, and soon everyone was hugging, crying, laughing. It was messy and emotional and perfect. That night, lying in bed with Phoenix curled up beside me, I thought about my family. My real family, the one in Westchester that I hadn't spoken to in over 2 years. I wondered what they were doing. If they ever thought about me. If they had any idea what I'd been through. And I realized, with a clarity that surprised me, that I didn't care anymore. Their absence in my life had hurt like hell at first. But over time, that hurt had faded, replaced by something else. Not forgiveness, exactly, but a kind of peaceful indifference. They'd made their choice, and I'd built a life without them. A good life. A life I was proud of. I didn't need their apology or their acknowledgement of what they'd done. I didn't need them to understand how much they'd hurt me. I just needed to keep living, keep healing, keep surrounding myself with people who knew how to love properly. Little did I know that 3 months later, my father would call, and I'd finally get the chance to say everything I'd been holding inside for 2.5 years. But that night, on my second cancerversary, I was just grateful to be alive. Grateful for my chosen family. Grateful for the strength I'd discovered in myself. Grateful for every day I got to wake up and be here, in this life I'd fought so hard to keep. I was in my apartment on a Wednesday evening in September, cooking dinner with Sarah and her new boyfriend, when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Rachel? It's Dad. I froze, wooden spoon in hand, staring at the stove. My father's voice. I hadn't heard it in over 2 years, not since he'd told me to handle my cancer quietly. Dad, I said carefully. Why are you calling? Rachel, I need to talk to you about something. His voice sounded different. Older. Tired. Can we meet? Or can I come see you? Why would I want to see you? Please, Rachel. It's important. I need your help. There was something in his voice that made me pause. Something desperate. What kind of help? I heard him take a shaky breath. I'm sick, Rachel. I had a stroke 3 months ago. A major one. I lost mobility on my left side, I have trouble speaking sometimes, and the doctors say I need long-term care. A caregiver. I was hoping you might be able to help me find someone. Or maybe. He trailed off. Maybe what? Maybe you could help take care of me. I know it's a lot to ask, but you're my daughter, and I'm your father, and I really need. Stop, I said, cutting him off. My hand was shaking now. Sarah had noticed something was wrong and muted the TV, watching me with concern. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You're calling me, after 2 years of silence, because you had a stroke and need a caregiver? Rachel, I know we haven't spoken in a while, but family is family. And you work in healthcare now, don't you? You understand this stuff. I really need help, and your mother can't handle it on her own, and Jennifer is too busy with her new house, and Jennifer is too busy, I repeated flatly. She has a lot on her plate right now. You know how she is. And you've always been the strong one, the capable one. Please, Rachel. I'm your father. 2 years ago, I would have cried. I would have broken down at the sound of my father's voice, desperate to reconnect, to fix what was broken. But 2 years of therapy, 2 years of support group meetings, 2 years of learning to value myself and my boundaries had changed me. I have a question for you, Dad, I said, my voice eerily calm. Do you know what I've been doing for the past 2 years? I assume working, living your life. Rachel, we can catch up later, but right now I really need to discuss this caregiver situation. I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer when I was 28 years old, I said. Do you remember that phone call, Dad? When I called you crying from Madison Square Park after getting the diagnosis? Silence. You told me you couldn't deal with it because Jennifer was planning her wedding. Mom said it was terrible timing. You told me to handle it quietly. Do you remember? Rachel, that was complicated. You don't understand what we were dealing with. I went through 6 months of chemotherapy alone. Do you know what chemotherapy is like, Dad? It's poison. They pump poison into your veins and hope it kills the cancer before it kills you. I threw up so much I had to be hospitalized for dehydration. I lost all my hair. I lost my job temporarily. I had to take out loans to pay for medical expenses that my insurance didn't cover. And I did it all alone, because my family was too busy planning a wedding. Rachel, I had a mastectomy. Do you know what that is? They cut off my breast, Dad. And you weren't there. I went through 8 weeks of radiation. You weren't there. I survived cancer, and you didn't even call to say congratulations. Because Jennifer's wedding was more important than my life. I could hear him crying now, on the other end of the line. I'm so sorry, Rachel. We made a terrible mistake. We should have been there for you. But I'm sick now, and you need my help, I finished for him. You need me to drop everything and take care of you, or help you find someone who will. After you abandoned me when I needed you most. Please, Rachel. I'm begging you. I'm your father. I thought about everything I'd been through. The fear, the pain, the loneliness. The way my parents had chosen a party over their daughter's life. The way they'd let me suffer alone because it was inconvenient for them to care. I thought about all the things I could say. All the ways I could tell them exactly how much they'd hurt me, exactly what kind of people they'd proven themselves to be. I could give them a detailed account of every horrible moment they'd missed, every time I'd needed them and they weren't there. But I didn't need to. Because the truth was, they'd already shown me who they were. And I didn't owe them anything, not my time, not my energy, not my care. I'd survived cancer without them. I'd built a life without them. And I was going to keep living that life, surrounded by people who actually showed up. My answer took exactly 4 words. I can't help you. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding, but I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Not satisfaction or revenge or even anger. Just a clean, clear sense of having drawn a line and stuck to it. Sarah was staring at me, eyes wide. Raj? What just happened? Who was that? My father, I said, setting the phone down on the counter. He had a stroke. He wants me to help take care of him. And you said? I said I can't help him. Sarah pulled me into a hug, and I let myself lean into her. My chosen family. The people who'd earned the right to be called family through their actions, not just their biology. Over the next few days, my father called 17 more times. I didn't answer. My mother called too, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails about how cruel I was being, how I owed them, how family takes care of family. I deleted them without listening to most of them. Jennifer even reached out, sending me a long Facebook message about how selfish I was being, how I'd always been jealous of her, how I was punishing our sick father for no reason. I blocked her without responding. But the message that did give me pause came from an unexpected source. My Aunt Carol, my father's younger sister. I hadn't spoken to her much over the years. She lived in California and we'd never been particularly close. But she called one evening about a week after my father's initial call. Rachel? It's your Aunt Carol. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. Hi, Aunt Carol. If this is about my dad, it is, but probably not in the way you're expecting. Rachel, I need you to know something. When your father had his stroke, your mother called me asking if I could come help with his care. During that conversation, she mentioned, almost as an aside, that you'd had cancer a couple years ago. Is that true? Yes, I said quietly. And your parents? They didn't help you through it? No. They told me they couldn't deal with it because Jennifer was planning her wedding. There was a long silence. Then, Jesus Christ. Rachel, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. No one told me. I'm not surprised. They didn't want anyone to know. It might have taken attention away from Jennifer's big day. That's unconscionable. Rachel, I want you to know that what you told your father, that you can't help him, is completely justified. You don't owe him anything. What he and your mother did to you is unforgivable. Hearing it from someone else, from someone in my family who understood what had happened, made something release in my chest. I hadn't realized how much I'd needed someone to validate that I wasn't crazy, wasn't cruel, wasn't wrong for setting this boundary. Thank you, I said, surprised by the tears in my voice. Thank you for saying that. I mean it. And Rachel? I know we haven't been close, but if you ever need anything, someone to talk to, whatever, please call me. What you went through, going through cancer alone. I can't imagine. You're incredibly strong. After that call, I felt more certain than ever that I'd made the right choice. I wasn't punishing my father out of spite or cruelty. I was simply maintaining the boundary that he and my mother had established when they abandoned me. They'd taught me that family obligations are conditional, that they only apply when it's convenient. I was just applying the lesson they'd taught me. My father called one final time about 2 weeks later. This time, when I saw his number, I answered. Rachel, please, Dad, stop. I'm going to say this once, and then I'm going to hang up, and I don't want you to call me again. Are you listening? Yes, he said quietly. 2 years ago, when I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer at 28 years old, I called you terrified and crying. I needed my parents. I needed support, help, someone to hold my hand through the most frightening experience of my life. And you told me you couldn't deal with it. You told me to handle it quietly because Jennifer's wedding was more important. Mom said it was terrible timing. Rachel, I'm not finished. I went through 6 months of chemotherapy alone. I went through surgery alone. I went through radiation alone. I dealt with the fear, the pain, the possibility that I might die, all alone. Because you decided that my sister's party was more important than my life. Now you're sick, and you want my help. You want me to be the daughter you refuse to be a parent to. And I'm telling you no. Not because I'm cruel, but because you taught me that family obligations are conditional. You taught me that caring for someone is only required when it's convenient. You set this boundary, Dad. I'm just respecting it. I made a mistake, he said, crying openly now. We made a terrible mistake. We should have been there for you. I'm so sorry, Rachel. Please, I'm begging you, please forgive me. I do forgive you, I said, and I was surprised to realize I meant it. I forgive you because holding on to anger would only hurt me, not you. But forgiving you doesn't mean I have to help you. It doesn't mean I owe you my time or my care. You weren't there when I needed you. I'm not going to be there for you now. That's the consequence of your choice. What am I supposed to do? He asked desperately. The same thing you told me to do when I had cancer. Figure it out. You're a smart, capable man. You can handle this. And Dad? Please don't call me again. I hung up and blocked his number. Then I blocked my mother's number, Jennifer's number, and anyone else from that side of my family except Aunt Carol. In the weeks that followed, I felt lighter than I had in years. I'd spent so long carrying the weight of my family's abandonment, wondering if maybe I'd been too sensitive, too demanding, if maybe I should have understood their position better. But setting that final boundary, saying those 4 words, I can't help you, had freed me from all of that. I went to therapy and talked through the complicated feelings that came up. Guilt, even though I knew I'd done nothing wrong. Grief for the family I'd wanted but never had. Relief at finally closing that chapter. My therapist, Dr. Rodriguez, helped me process it all. You know, she said during one session, a lot of people in your position would have helped their father. Not because they wanted to, but because they felt obligated. Because society tells us we have to forgive and forget, that family is everything, that we owe our parents unconditional love. But you recognize that obligation has to go both ways. That parents have to earn the right to their children's care through their own actions. That's incredibly mature. Sometimes I worry I'm being vindictive, I admitted. Are you helping your father out of love and genuine care, or are you withholding help to punish him? Neither. I'm just protecting myself. I know that if I let them back into my life, they'll hurt me again. They've shown me who they are. Then you're not being vindictive. You're being wise. Life moved forward. I continued working at the healthcare nonprofit, finding deep satisfaction in work that felt meaningful. I started dating again, something I'd been too scared to do during and immediately after treatment. I went on a trip to Italy with Sarah, finally using some of that travel fund I'd had to postpone when I got sick. I celebrated my 30th birthday surrounded by friends, feeling grateful to be alive and cancer-free. Through mutual friends, I heard occasional updates about my father's condition. He'd had another stroke, smaller than the first. He was in a nursing home now, one that Medicaid partially covered. My mother visited him daily, but it was hard on her. Jennifer helped when she could, but she had her own life, her own priorities. I felt sympathy for them, in an abstract way. But I didn't feel obligated to do anything about it. They'd made their choices, and now they were living with the consequences, just like I'd had to live with the consequences of fighting cancer alone. About 6 months after that final phone call, Aunt Carol reached out again. I wanted to let you know that your father passed away, she said gently. It was peaceful. Another stroke, and he didn't wake up. How's my mother? I asked, surprised by my own concern. Not great. She's struggling with guilt, I think. She keeps saying she wishes they'd done things differently with you. Do you think she wants to reach out to me? I don't know. Would you want her to? I thought about it. I don't think so. Too much has happened. Too much time has passed. I built a good life without them, and I don't want to risk that by letting them back in. I understand. For what it's worth, Rachel, I'm proud of you. You set boundaries and stuck to them, even when it was hard. That takes real strength. I didn't go to my father's funeral. I didn't send flowers or a card. I didn't reach out to my mother or Jennifer to offer condolences. I simply let it be, another closed chapter in a book I'd stopped reading years ago. Instead, that weekend, I went to a cancer survivors retreat upstate with some friends from my support group. We hiked, talked, laughed, and celebrated still being alive. We shared our stories, not just of cancer, but of everything that came after. The relationships that ended, the families who disappointed us, the friends who surprised us with their loyalty, the strength we didn't know we had. You know what the worst part was? One woman, Maria, said as we sat around a campfire. Not the chemo or the surgery or even the fear of dying. It was finding out who actually gave a damn. You learn real quick who your people are when you're going through something like this. Truth, said another woman, Jessica. My husband left me 3 weeks after my diagnosis. Said he couldn't handle it. But my neighbor, this woman I barely knew, drove me to every single chemo appointment for 6 months. People surprise you. Sometimes in good ways, sometimes in bad ways, I added. My family abandoned me during treatment because my sister was planning her wedding. But my roommate, my friends, even some coworkers I barely knew, they became my family. They're the ones who showed up. And when your actual family came back needing help? Maria asked. I'd shared my story with the group before. I said I can't help you. 4 words. And then I moved on with my life. There was a murmur of approval around the circle. These women understood. They'd all been through their own versions of abandonment and betrayal. They knew that sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away from people who've proven they don't deserve a place in your life, even if those people are family. That night, lying in my sleeping bag and looking up at the stars through the cabin window, I thought about everything I'd been through. The diagnosis that had turned my world upside down. The treatment that had nearly broken me. The family that had abandoned me. The friends who'd saved me. The boundaries I'd learned to set. The life I'd rebuilt from scratch. I thought about my father's phone call, his desperate plea for help, and my forward response. I can't help you. Some people might think those words were cruel. But they were honest. They were necessary. They were the truth. I couldn't help him because helping him would require me to sacrifice my own well-being, my own peace, my own boundaries. I couldn't help him because he'd taught me that helping is optional, conditional, something you do only when it's convenient. I couldn't help him because I'd learned the hard way that I had to protect myself first, that my survival, physical and emotional, had to be my priority. And most importantly, I couldn't help him because I was finally, after years of struggle and pain and rebuilding, at peace with my life. I'd fought too hard for that peace to give it up for people who'd proven they didn't value me. I'm 30 years old now, 3 years cancer-free, and I've built a life I'm proud of. I have a job I love, working to improve healthcare access for underserved communities, work that feels deeply personal after my own experience navigating the healthcare system alone. I have friends who are more family to me than my blood relatives ever were, people who've proven through their actions that they care. I have a small apartment in Brooklyn that's truly mine, filled with plants and books and memories of survival. I have a cat named Phoenix who greets me at the door every evening. I have a future that's no longer overshadowed by fear or obligation to people who don't deserve it. I have boundaries. I have self-respect. I have peace. And I have those 4 words that changed everything. I can't help you. Sometimes people ask me if I regret it. If I wish I'd handled things differently with my father. If I feel guilty. The answer is always the same, no. I don't regret protecting myself from people who'd hurt me. I don't wish I'd sacrificed my well-being for people who wouldn't sacrifice anything for mine. I don't feel guilty for applying the same standards to my father that he applied to me. What I do feel is grateful. Grateful that I survived cancer. Grateful for the people who showed up when I needed them most. Grateful for the strength I discovered in myself. Grateful for the clarity that came from my family's abandonment, the clarity to see that biology doesn't make family, actions do. My father passed away about 6 months after that final phone call, according to Aunt Carol. Another stroke, quick and relatively painless. My mother apparently struggled with guilt in his final days, saying over and over that they should have done things differently with me. But she never reached out. Never apologized. Never tried to make amends. I didn't go to the funeral. I didn't send flowers. I didn't call my mother to offer condolences. I simply let it be, another chapter closing in a book I'd stopped reading years ago. Instead, that weekend, I went to a cancer survivors retreat upstate with friends from my support group. We hiked and talked and celebrated still being alive. We shared our stories, not just of cancer, but of everything that came after. The relationships that ended. The families who disappointed us. The friends who surprised us. The strength we found in ourselves. And I realized something. My father's abandonment, as painful as it was, had given me an unexpected gift. It had forced me to become truly independent, to build a support system based on choice rather than obligation, to develop a spine of steel. I'd had to learn to value myself enough to set boundaries, even when those boundaries were painful to maintain. Cancer tried to kill me. My family's abandonment tried to break me. But I survived both. I'm still here, still standing, still building a life worth living. And those 4 words, "I can't help you," weren't just an answer to my father's request. They were a declaration of independence. A statement that I would no longer set myself on fire to keep other people warm. A boundary that said my well-being matters, my peace matters, my life matters. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to save someone who wouldn't save you. Sometimes love means knowing when to let go. Sometimes family is something you choose, not something you're born into. I survived stage 3 breast cancer at 28 years old, largely alone. I survived the aftermath, the emotional devastation of abandonment, the long process of healing and rebuilding. And I'll continue to survive, on my own terms, surrounded by people who've earned the right to be in my life through their actions, not their DNA. My father called crying, needing a caregiver. My answer took exactly 4 words. I can't help you. And I've never regretted those words for a single moment. They were the truest thing I've ever said.